Welcome, friends, to Breakfast in the Ruins, a Michael Moorcock-flavoured podcast. It's been almost 14 months since our last discussion about Moorcock and gaming, so I thought it was high time we had another look. Last time around, Steve Round dropped in along with Dave Dempster, and they talked about their experiences as seasoned GMs of the likes of Stormbringer and Hawkmoon. And I'd recently seen Steve's post on his Cruising for a Musin blog about the conclusion of his latest Stormbringer campaign. So I thought, what the hell? Let's see if his gang are willing to drop into virtual D&Ts and talk about their play experiences as a blend of existing Moorcock readers and gamers, and, in one case, a neophyte on both counts. What we discuss will, of course, entail some spice and descriptions of ill intentions, grue, and violence. Stormbringer is a Moorcockian game, of course, so it includes all that entails. So join Steve, Chloe, Sara, Roddy, Jay, Richie, and Ceirun, and me, as we board the Merciful Servant, and join us as they engage in some reflections on the void. We're back at D&Ts, and this time we're looking at Moorcock and RPGs again for the 7th time, but slightly different this time, because instead of just me and Steve, or me and another, just talking about our preferences about Moorcockian role-playing games, or what even Moorcockian means, or what role-playing games we've been playing, or what developments are out there. Actually, on this occasion, I've got a whole group of people who have just finished. Was it your second Stormbringer campaign? Somebody remind me? Yeah. So, concluded 2 whole Stormbringer campaigns, delivered by the Games Master. Do you call yourself a Games Master, Steve? What do you call yourself in a Stormbringer game?
I call myself Ref. The players call me something much fruitier.
Okay, fair enough. So you have refed 2 Stormbringer campaigns. Now, all of these conversations on this podcast date back to when Loz, Phil and I, probably 3 or 4 years ago, had a light-hearted look at the Chaosium Stormbringer RPG, which actually caused a little bit of controversy because our light-hearted stabs at it, some saw we were picking holes in a sacred cow. But it was fine because some of the comments were pretty funny, so it was worth it. From there, we've continued. We've looked at a variety of approaches. We've looked at Stormhack with Ralph Lovegrove. We've played a few games, a Stormbringer 3rd edition with some of the patrons and had a good yak about it. It was really one game, actually, played over several sessions because my GMing skills are piss poor. And what I thought was a one-shot turned out to be never-ending and went on forever. And I'm not sure we ever actually concluded that game. I think we had an idea that we would conclude it in person, and then COVID happened, and we just never got around to it again. Rob, aka Old Shabby Gamer of the We Timorous Bushi podcast over in Japan, he came on to talk about it. Clark has joined us to yak about using a sandbox setting for Moorcockian gaming. Ted, aka Ted and Carmen, has been on to talk about his approach to refining Stormbringer, and if you're interested in reading his articles, they're on the blog of his blog called The Tomb of Ted and Carmen. And of course, Steve came along last time around with our mucker Dave Dempster over in Switzerland to talk about their experiences as seasoned GMs. But now here we are with a whole team of gamers that have completed multiple campaigns of Stormbringer, or its variations, ready to share their experience and insights, which is really, really exciting and interesting for me. Because one of the things that I dearly wish that I could do was play a whole campaign face-to-face. Because not only do you all game, but you all game face-to-face. An increasing rarity in my experience as I get older, and most of my friends are scattered across the north of England. So online gaming's okay, but you know what? Face-to-face is, well, the chef's kiss of gaming for me. But first order of business, and we're going to have to go around the screen here as we figure this out. But often it's the case, I say often, most of the time it's the case on this podcast that we accompany our conversations about these various rambles with some beers of various descriptions. Horrific nature of those beers tends to vary. I've popped down the Hoptimist in Guiseley in Leeds today to try and find something of interest specifically for this evening. And I know Steve has, and I know a couple of you others have as well. So first point of call, I'm going to go around my screen. I was going to go by strike rank, but I thought it was probably easier just to go around my screen. I don't know if it's strike... Right, I've got to get this out of the way up front. Steve, were you using Stormbringer or Elric, ! Or Stormbringer 5th edition for your last campaign? Which one did you use?
Elric exclamation mark. But
Right.
strike ranks were not a thing in that. That's more RuneQuesty.
Right, okay. So does the Elric role-playing game have strike ranks, or was that just jettisoned, or is it
I think that
something you
was.
choose not to use?
I mean, if it was there, I wouldn't use it. I find it a bit clunky, but I'm not sure if it is, if I'm honest.
This is an old hangover from RuneQuest, isn't it? Which
Yeah.
is where Stormbringer first originated. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to go around the screen anyway. So strike rank is irrelevant. So Chloe, you're actually having a cuppa, I believe.
Yeah, I am. I've got a cup of coffee in my novelty Christmas mug, because I'm yet to do the dishes, so down to the last couple of mugs. I am actually very new to the Moorcock world and RPG gaming itself. This is the first campaign that I've ever done. I read a couple of the books and I was really kind of thrown in at the deep end. So I play Donnie and Nanny in this campaign that we've just run.
Well, that's really cool because it's absolutely fine having people like myself and perhaps Steve and anybody else who have ideas of Moorcock based upon years of gaming and years of playing the games and years of reading the books. It's actually much nicer to have a fresh perspective of someone coming in to actually explain from your point of view what is Moorcockian. But you know what? We'll get to that. Sarah, you're on gin and whiskey.
Hello,
I think.
I am. Yeah, I've got bog standard gin just to tide me over because I have. This is my favourite whiskey. It's called Fable. It's from Scotland. Ashamedly, I can only ever find it in airports, so I only pick it up whenever I go travelling. Really, really good stuff. Please check out their website just because they've got this whole lore around the whiskey and like the way you look at how these whiskies come to be is just fantastic. They do a lot of work for their advertising. I think it really does pay off, and it tastes good as well. So that's always a plus, you know. I'm not new to Moorcockian. I was introduced to the books by my dad when I was like mid-teens, I think maybe 14 or 15. He's got like this little, I guess you call it like an extra airing cupboard, but he used it as like this little library. And I remember going in there and there's just these wall-to-wall books of all these fantasy novels. And I remember him giving me Elric of Melniboné at the age of 15 and saying like, here, give this a go. And I was hooked from then. To find out that Steve was running, this was way back years and years ago for the first campaign. It was a real treat to be able to see that world come to life. So yeah, I've got to be honest, I really, really love both the books and the kind of system, but I'm more on that later, I'm sure. But just for Chloe, really, as somebody who was really new to this, she really smashed it. I think everyone can agree. For someone who'd never played, let alone never played Elric, she was fantastic. She really, really did well. And I play Bear in this one, or Little Bear, as everybody knows me. I'm very pleased to say I made it to the very final session of this campaign, which is quite a rarity. But yeah, that's me. And yeah, it was a real pleasure to sit in on all these campaigns, honestly.
Quick question about that whiskey. It's not one I've heard of. I'm not a whiskey expert, but I kind of know what I like. Where does it sit in like the world of whiskey? Is it like a Speyside whiskey? Is it peaty? Is it smoky, medicinal?
No, it's not peaty or smoky at all. It's got some quite fruity tones. I think some of their blended stuff's quite nice, but I'm more of a single malt girl, to be honest. This is a blended one, but I really do quite like it. But smoky ones, they taste like ashtrays to me. I can't get on with them. So I do recommend this if you don't like smoky whiskey.
That probably works for me because I can't stand whiskies that are medicinal because they taste like TCP. I'm not a peaty whiskey guy. A friend of mine came down from Edinburgh a few years ago who knows that I like whiskey, and he brought a £120 bottle of whiskey and it was fucking horrible.
Oh no!
it was really, really awful, and I felt terrible. So I was having to force it down in my kitchen. Oh yes. Anyway,
it's awful. Yeah, this one's called the Three Companions. It's like an 8-year aged blended whiskey, and I really do like it just to kind of drink. I do have a single malt downstairs. It's like a 12-year, which is lovely, but I don't crack that out unless it's like a birthday or a Christmas celebration.
I think there's a lot of snobbery about blended whiskies.
Yeah, I know.
Some of them are actually really, really good.
Honestly, yeah. And as myself, I do prefer a single malt, but it's really nice to find a blended one because you don't have to break the bank to actually get hold of a really good whiskey. But yeah, I will be honest, I am a snob as well.
Yeah. Well, odd little secret that I learned. It's not a fucking secret, but odd little fact that I learned when we were up in Scotland a few years ago. Steve, you know that we always go off on fucking weird channels and digressions when we're on this podcast, but we've already started. But we were up near the Cromarty Firth years ago, and there's a little it's a little passenger ferry that goes backwards and forwards over the Cromarty Firth. And whenever I was up in Scotland, we'd always visit all the distilleries, and I'd buy distillery exclusive single malts and all this business. And there was this old guy running the ferry, and he had a roll-up cigarette glued to his bottom lip that he never touched, and it never moved, and it was just perpetually dangling from his bottom lip. He said, "Oh, do you do all the whiskey tours then?" I said, "Yeah, well, we go to the distilleries." So there's only one whiskey worth drinking. It's the best sipping whiskey. It's the best mixing whiskey. It's White and Mackay. If you spend any more money than that, you're wasting your money. I just nodded, like, yeah, all right, fair enough. Because the last time I drunk White and Mackay was probably when I was 19. And I drank a half bottle of it after a night in the pub, and somebody had spiked my drinks, and I was ill and threw up terribly at some girl's house. This girl I really liked, and I absolutely destroyed her sofa with vomit thanks to drinking a half bottle of White and Mackay after a night in the pub. So I'd never touched it since. But we went to a supermarket and I got a bottle of White and Mackay just to try it, to really cut this story down to size. There's a couple of occasions now when I've had people over who consider themselves to be whiskey fans, and I've done a blind taste test, and out of the top 5, when there's been a Stronach 12-year-old and a Ben Rins 15-year-old, White and Mackay has always been in the top 2. 15 quid bottle of White and Mackay from Morrison's. It's always been in the top 2. Weird. There you go.
You know what? I've never had White and Mackay, so I'm going to go away and do that now, especially since you've just told me it's 15 quid. So
yeah,
there's no reason not to, is there?
Around about 15 quid in any supermarket.
Blended whiskies. Best blended whiskey I think I've ever had is Canadian. Wiser's 18-year-old Canadian whiskey. And it's very, very nice. You can get it online for about £40 a bottle, but yeah, it's really, really good. It's something special.
I'll check that out, because I do like Crown Royal Rye as well, which is a Canadian one. Not so keen on the Crown Royal normal, but the Crown Royal Rye is excellent. Right, we're going to be here all night, aren't we? But Ceirun, as you've chimed in, let's come to you. What are you drinking this evening, if anything?
I've just got a couple of bottles of salt. Crazy busy day, so spent a lot of it in the kitchen cooking. So
that's fair enough.
Didn't actually have any time to go out and go shopping or anything. So,
Steve, I know you've got your D6 beer slate. I'm not going to ask you to list them, because once again, we're going to be here all night. But at some point soon, someone's going to roll a D6, and we're going to select from our slate. So Tracy, who isn't Tracy, remind me of your actual name.
It's Richard.
Richard, you've got your D6
also known as
slate.
Mantrap, but let's leave that alone.
Mantrap. Well, no, let's not leave it alone.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
It would have been early 2000s or late 90s, Steve?
Yeah, late 90s it was.
Yeah, so Steve used to be my boss. So I used to work at a restaurant, and Steve was one of the managers there. And he was telling me about all this geekery. People going and doing role-playing games, which to me was very odd. I was kind of a sporty person. And he said, no, it's not odd at all. He said, when you watch a horror film and you think, don't go down those stairs, you get to choose. You don't have to go down the stairs. It's all in mind, but
Rich, sorry to interrupt your story, but I've just got to say, out of everyone, you do choose to go down the stairs, metaphorically speaking.
Actually, I would say he chooses to wait at the top of the stairs, and then something much, much worse happens to him.
Sorry to interrupt.
Wow, I mean, I was in full flow.
I'll second it, though. Every damn time.
Every time.
He made it sound a lot less geeky, and I thought, I'll give that a go. So I've done a few Stormbringer campaigns, and Mantrap was my first ever. Well, the character wasn't called Mantrap, but I said I want a Mantrap for catching food and stuff. And there was an incident where I decided to lay this Mantrap down, and one of our other characters proceeded over it. I thought I'd killed him, but I forgot he was on a horse. And then there was a bit of an argument about, you're getting me a new horse, mate. That was my first sort of introduction. So that went down well. A few people weren't very happy with me.
But to be fair, as a novice gamer, it sounded like you got it really quickly. Because, a player character saying, I want a Mantrap to catch rabbits or something, is such a gaming thing. It's, nice.
So that backfired. I'm hoping that one of my choices doesn't backfire. So this is from Hong Kong. and it's a rainbow sherbet sour beer called Guaylo.
That sounds revolting.
So that
I
is
like the
odd.
sound of that.
And I've got a Wrexham beer, and the only other sort of Welsh one is Calon Lan.
I'm actually quite into these weird dessert sours now, so that actually sounds pretty good
It's
to
a
me.
nice Welsh on the Calon. And I've got Corona, John Smith, and Newcastle. Okay. Never had one.
Thank you.
Give it a go.
Jay, what's your booze scenario?
Oh, well, I'm just really lame. I'll just have whatever's put in front of me. Like, I'm not drinking right now today. I'm just existing on what we're going from our local delivery shop. So I'm drinking Coca-Cola. But it's tiny. It's tiny. Misclicked the button, so instead of having like a proper size, I'll tell you. Look, if I put it by there, it looks huge. But next, it's like tiny. I feel like
you just say you went
a giant. Oh, look at me! Oh,
yeah, I'm done.
It's an aeroplane size.
Okay, thank you, Jay. I think that's more than reasonable.
Fancy.
And Rodders, I think you've come determined to give us all glass envy.
Well, sort of. To start the pod,
either that or you're absolutely tiny. I'm not sure which is the score. I don't know. You're either tiny or your glass is massive, or both.
There you go.
Yeah, that's fairly impressive. Yeah.
Seem bigger.
So,
Chloe!
for the sake of listeners, Rodders is modelling his glass.
Similarly as well, I'd like to say.
Yeah. So do you have a list, or are you just on a beer? What are you going
Just cider.
Oh.
Inches and black.
Oh, very nice. I had a couple of inches this afternoon. It happens to be my partner's favourite cider. All right, cool. Well, somebody grab a D6 and roll a dice for those of us, which is Richie, Steve and myself, with our stupid beer table.
Can I persuade you with a dice that's got a little snail inside of it for
Yes,
rolling?
you can.
Cool.
Yes, you can.
That's a 2, baby.
I had a 2 as well.
Okay, so 1, 2. Steve, you first. What have you got?
Right, so that is a Berg's blonde beer from the West Hoyk Brewery, whatever that is.
Richie has just gone to grab his. Richie, what have you got?
This is the Calon Lan Welsh Amber.
I had that when we were in Barmouth last year. I think that might even be from the little tap room in Barmouth. But they've got a little brewery. Does the label say where the brewery is?
Porthmadog.
Oh, right, just up the road.
Yeah, it says Porthmadog.
Wales.
Yeah, so we had some digs just in between Barmouth and Porthmadog along that coast. Yeah, and we went in a really, really nice tap room that had a few of their beers, and they were delicious. Yeah. Are they the ones who do Purple Moose?
Nice.
I can't remember. Anyway, very good. I've got... Now, actually, this might even be Welsh. Oh, no, it's Northern Monk. More. Meadow Sweet, Spelt and Honey, double dry hopped IPA. And in a way, I was dreading this one because I've got really fed up of IPAs, and particularly dry hopped IPAs. I think they're lazy. I think all the breweries that are doing them need to up the game and do stupid fucking shit like peanut butter jam tart, roly-poly sour stouts or something, just to give us something proper to talk about, because IPA is boring. But anyway, I'm going to pour this one out.
You would enjoy Tiny Rebel that do weird flavoured beers like Pineapple Express and stuff like that.
Holy crap. The last time my mate Loz was on, we had some Tiny Rebel. And when Tiny Rebel did their first Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man Stout or whatever it was, I quite liked it. But as the booby prize in my collection here, I have got Slay Puffed Cherry Liqueur Marshmallow Porter.
Beautiful.
This is the last of the ones that I got in at Christmas before Loz came over, and I've got to say they were all pretty horrific. So in a way, I'm dreading that one. But this will do for now. So while those of us who've selected our beers give them a taste and see what they're like, you've talked about how you generally rate yourselves in the RPG sphere. But Chloe, I'm interested because you were all new to this. How would you define Moorcockian in terms of fantasy and tropes? Because people commented that you took to this sort of Moorcockian Stormbringer style of gaming really quickly and easily. And is it because it's more relatable than hobbits and dwarfs?
Yeah, I can see the appeal of being like the average person flung into a sort of mad scenario. They say that, the two things that make like a good film or a good story is either a crazy person in a normal situation or a normal person in a crazy situation. And the first character I made was the most normal person that they could be. They were a balanced character. They had like a really strong Cornish accent. They were just like a guy. They were, suppose in my mind, he was kind of like a quintessentially like dad archetype of like your winning son, kind of just like a good vibe. Everyone went to him for his problems, kind of thing. And then it was just like the most barbaric things kept happening to him. And it was by the end of it, I started to feel very sorry for him because I could feel in my mind this character's personality almost changing to be like, you know what? I tried my best. Now you're all gonna die.
Did this character survive?
So he did not survive, unfortunately. But he did die in a very Donny way. So as weird it is to say, his death was appropriate, and I was pleased with the outcome of it. He didn't die doing something that he wouldn't have normally been doing. He died in a good, organic way that felt right.
Not like some characters, Chloe.
Yeah, unlike,
we won't name names. That's not really...
names. I mean, Scooter the horse is the first one that I think of when I think of characters that died before their time.
Well, let's hear it.
So Nanny is when I really started getting into like the idea of it, and my sort of experience with role-playing games before being like thrown into this world was very like sanitized, like happy clappy D&D, typical like everyone's having a good time, nothing really bad happens. And then just before I started this campaign, Rich very kindly lent me some of the comic books, and in the first page they like rip a baby open and like try and find the woman from the guts of this baby, like divination. And I was like, oh wow, okay, great, awesome. And it was like, this is the hero of these stories ripping this baby open. This is like the good guy, but like not. And it was interesting to be like, oh, you can get really dark with this, like really dark. And it meant we could have much more, not necessarily adult themes, but we could really go hog wild with like the gore and like the idea of like, I'm gonna rip a kid apart and just really go mad with it and not worry about whether or not it was in theme with like your fantasy world with like your happy little hobbits and that sort of thing. So I very much enjoyed how dark it was. And unfortunately for other D&D groups that I go to, I take that with me and they cannot stop me.
Yes.
So I inflict the darkness on them as well, as Moorcock would have wanted.
Rich, was that one of the Blondell adaptations of Elric, the baby ripping?
Yes. So there was one called Stormbringer.
Yes, the French Julian Blondell adaptation.
That's right. I can't remember what the first one was, but it's just for somebody who hasn't seen it before, it looks dark and horrific. A lot of bright vibrant colours of blood and things like that. Yeah.
One thing about those Blondell adaptations is they take those books from the 60s and they apply a very, very dark, a deep and over-the-top, brutal Gothic sheen to it all that's not necessarily there in the books. Even though the books do have dark elements, I think the Blondell adaptations really dial it up to 11. Yeah. So we've got that first thing. It's basically dark, unpleasant, terrible things happen, and it's kind of the antithesis of the Hobbit and Dwarf warm Hobbit hole feel of perhaps a lot of people's approach to D&D. What are the other Moorcockian and by extensions?
Another thing I would probably add as well is that I forgot my train of thought now. Dang it. Never mind. I won't add anything.
It's okay. I'll give you 2 seconds. I'll give you 2 seconds, Chloe, because for me, it's like, I don't know, it was the epitome of you fuck around and you find out. Like, I feel as though all of us were just on this journey constantly of finding out because we wouldn't stop fucking around. And that is what I love about the world as well. It is brutal. It doesn't pull punches. I know that we've spoken to Steve about potentially running D&D, and he's so steadfastly against it, just because I think it's too safe in some ways. And what's true about Moorcock's world and the system that they've brought into the RPG is that you will suffer, essentially, even if you are just trying to stay on the sidelines. And I think, Rich, you can probably attest to this, that even when you decide to sit out, you still suffer for that, you know. And Steve's quite good at bringing to life the way that it's, you know, nothing happens in a vacuum. We might be in a crew of people who are making decisions and causing ripples, and things are happening, but that affects innocent people as well. And he's really good at bringing that to life as well, in a way that I think Moorcock was good at, in just showing that, you know, you might be the hero with the black sword that's filled with chaos, but innocent people will die as a result of the things you do. And I don't think D&D really deals with it. I don't think any other system that I've played really like leans into it as much as this one does.
Well, the thing is, you can be this hero and you can be as strong as you like, and you'll go into a fight and you will die if you are, if you go in by yourself, unless you are lucky. And
I think one of the main kind of tropes from Steve's reffing is, are you sure you want to do that?
Again, creates a real dilemma. If you are invested in your character and you know what the genuine risks are and you can actually die, and you've got a young girl that needs saving and she's in a horrendous situation, and Steve's getting your morality going, and thinking, do I save this person? It actually gets you making proper decisions, which you wouldn't really be making otherwise.
100%. Chloe, have you found your train of thought?
Sorry, yeah, I remember my train of thought now. Doesn't matter how much of a good person you are, bad things, terrible things will still happen to you, is the thing that I was thinking of.
There's like a full table, isn't it? A full table of grievous wounds, waiting.
How I played Donnie to be like as neutral as possible, and in the end he kind of became this weird like angel because he was the only person who was like doing good. But even then, like,
how many times, Chloe, did you and I have a conversation where you kept on saying, "I'm on a ship full of monsters"?
Yeah, I'm literally on a ship full of monsters, and the only reason that Donnie is staying there is because he feels so bad for the crew, like Master N and like the other like crew members,
the innocent crew. But yeah, they were constantly just the conversations that were happening were of a nature of, okay, well, these people will die. Okay, that's a price worth paying in order to move on. And Chloe, as Donnie, is sat there horrified. Like, hold on, what? That's real people. Yeah, but collateral damage and.
Yeah, I think the top part of that was at Oin, I think, where it was like horrendous stuff was happening constantly.
We don't talk about Oin. Chloe, we don't talk about Oin.
We don't talk about Oin.
God.
Please talk about Oin.
That is my favourite.
Man, Oin will never forget the things that we did.
About what we did to the Onions.
I know. They're not called Onions. You remember this? Steve was really upset when we called them Onions instantly.
Me?
I know. No. So we decided. Steve gave us this really. Like, it's almost sandboxy, I guess, but it still was very much operative within the Young Kingdoms. But he gave us, basically, we could decide what we were going to do and where we were going to go. And after much debate, I think we all settled on Oin, because in the campaign, it was one of the places that hadn't yet been taken over by the forces of law. I don't know how much context has been given for this particular campaign, but we were basically chaos. I want to say some of us were worshippers, very much so. And there was an entire kind of the extreme of law was coming, and we needed to try and stop that, ultimately to create balance. But as Chloe learned to Donnie's detriment, that really does make a crew full of monsters sometimes.
Yeah, it does, which is weird because I wasn't the only person of balance there.
No.
Yeah.
Was Ceirun ever really balanced? Is my question. We'll get into it later, but I don't believe you were.
My character was just always in for himself. He was a
Which
traveller
is-
and a
that's not
loner, and he didn't believe in
very
any
balanced.
gods.
That's quite chaotic,
It's not very
if you ask me.
balanced,
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't have any gods. I didn't follow anyone. Just followed myself, and that
So-
was it. Yeah, and I was good with my hands. And yes, Owen was really
Subject
good.
to
That
those
was
skills.
one time where
One time.
I really
One
did put
time.
Steve on the spot, and he said basically I had to improvise near enough the rest of the session.
Mhm.
He said
So-
I might as well have just thrown all my notes in the bin because he didn't think I was going to do what I wanted to do, which was so Rich got the Mirror of Forgetfulness.
Mirror of Memory?
Yeah, Mirror of
Yeah,
Memory.
Mirror of Memory, yeah. And I wanted to make him a shield out of it. But to make this shield absolutely awesome, I needed to get a child to use the body of it to
Needed
You
is doing a
didn't,
lot of
you
heavy
didn't need to
lifting.
do it though,
Yes.
did you? You didn't. You didn't
Well,
need
just to
to.
make it as good as it could have been. And yeah, it would
Little
have been.
twist to it.
But yeah, Steve, he was, well, this is going to be very difficult when you're on a boat, moving around and stuff. And no, I'm doing it now in the village.
In front of everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, to cut Oin short, we went to Oin with the intention of trying to, piece together some of the plot, find out ways to progress this story forward, and inflicted upon them Kieran's character, which kind of took him back from the point of no return. If I'm honest, that was a session to remember. I would say it's still not one of my memorable moments, but it was definitely one to remember.
So to complete the pitch here, Andy, because there's a lot of dancing around what actually happened here. Kieran's character Shan decided that the only way to do this was to kidnap children off the streets, ritually sacrifice them, and use their bones as the frame of the mirror stroke shield, which as a ref was not on my sort of forecast of where the things were going to go.
Bingo sheet.
Surprise, yeah.
And I did say, you sure you want to do this? We joked about this already, but because and again, going back to what the guys were saying at the start, there's ramifications for this sort of thing. You're not going to kidnap children off the street in a small, relatively close-knit community, and it's not going to get noticed. So the rest of the session was dealing with that. The local militia, worked out what was going on. They brought a sorcerer in, a witch, summoned a demon, which then sniffed out the remains, which of course led them to the party, and the rest was like like a farce, a play where some of the party were off still thinking everything's hunky dory, coming back and finding literally things on fire and militia going crazy, and the warehouse that they were in is in flames, and one it was a great session, don't get me wrong, but it was absolutely all reaction to what had been chosen in the first 5 minutes of the session.
This
Well, that's really
fucking
interesting,
guy.
isn't it? That's really interesting because we've already got two major elements that you could use to say this defines what a Moorcockian game could be like. One is that it's more relatable, that it's dangerous. If you fuck around, you find out. The other is that your characters can, if they so wish, choose to build a mirror frame out of children's bones that they just recently sacrificed. Reasonable? I don't know. That's two. What else we got?
As a consequence of Kieran's actions, he got imprisoned, and I had a demon, and this is where
Elemental.
Steve elemental, sorry, yeah. But this is where Steve doesn't let you get away with any sort of. You've got to be very clear in your instructions. To any ambiguity, you'll pounce on it. So I said to this elemental, "Go and retrieve Kieran's character, and if you get seen, just leave, come back, because I want you safe." So this elemental goes through the earth, because it's an earth elemental, gets into the jail, sees someone else as well as Kieran, and the elemental's name was Gunt, and he says, "Gunt has been seen," and then he wasn't very clever, and then disappears straight away without Kieran because he'd been seen. So I'm there.
Been seen by Shan, because you didn't make it clear.
I didn't make it clear.
So it was like
I was struggling mid-fight with the guards.
Yes, that's
The
right.
weapons. And he appeared, and it was like, "Oh, there's help! There's Gunt!" And then Gunt disappears. With it, my heart.
What
I
was
think
He looks like he's going to be a hero. He just
Yeah.
goes with nothing.
Was it Richard Harris's voice
Richard Harris?
Steve used for Gunt? Yeah, just disappeared. I don't know if that that might not be more cocky, and that might be more Steve, to be honest, because he really did punish you for that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It gives you the flexibility to do it, doesn't it? Really, because it's not necessarily all about dice rolls.
No, it's true. It's true. The Moorcock world really does give you. You can be. Doesn't that say something awful about us? Is that you really can be whatever you want to be, and you choose to be a man who kills a child.
So for me, this was only my second Stormbringer campaign. It was introduced by Rich on the first one a few years ago, and that was actually my first role playing. So for me, I would say that the closest thing I could describe it is as Game of Thrones. It is fantasy, but it is as brutal as you can get, and yeah, it is really, really good. And when watching it and playing this now, you can kind of see where people who created Game of Thrones and things like that must have, roots and read something or know something about
let's be real,
and how brutal the world is.
The amount of morally grey characters with silver hair alone, you would think would be quite Moorcockian.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting you raise Game of Thrones because George R.R. Martin is a massive Moorcock nerd.
Oh, is he? That makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense.
Obviously, watching Game of Thrones first and then coming and playing Stormbringer, for me, that is the closest thing I could describe to someone else that didn't know anything about Stormbringer or playing it, and just say it's as brutal as that. You're there 1 minute, the next minute you're gone.
Yeah, you are very vulnerable. You don't start off really with any I'm super strong, or I've got this magic, or you are just a guy.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that the system models.
It doesn't help you anyway.
Yeah, that's one of the things that the system models really, really well, because it doesn't matter how powerful you've got, you still probably only got 14 hit points. Tops.
Yeah.
And if I don't know, a Lormirian war axe wielded by somebody with muscles does X amount of. Okay, yeah.
Like 400
Sarah has a hand up.
Yeah.
That was me to a T. Yeah.
Yeah, it's things are going to end in tears. Yeah, the funny thing about Game of Thrones as well. I mean, if you look at it, and once you realise that George R.R. Martin loved himself a bit of Moorcock, it all starts to make sense. Because the what are they called in the House of the Dragon? The family with the platinum hair.
The Targaryens.
Targaryens.
Sorry.
They're just the Melnibonéans, aren't they?
Honestly, right down to the incest,
Yeah.
Look at Matt Smith's character. Is it Daemon or whatever with the winged helm and the armor? That's straight off the cover of a Brunner ad. It's a Whedon.
The first edition Mongoose Elric rules, the picture of Elric on that is basically the Matt Smith Targaryen. That's the Frank Brunner one. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's the Frank Brunner one where he looks like an 80-year-old woman. Don't get me wrong, I love it. But the Elric first edition Mongoose rules, if you just Google that at any point, if you can be asked, that picture, basically the armour that Matt Smith wears in that tournament is straight off the cover of that book. He's just really modelled to look like Elric off the cover of one of these novels, which is a weird thing, really, because what we've got to remember is a lot of these covers where Elric is dark and moody. I think the Julian Blondell adaptations in the comics picked up on this a lot. The dark armour, the gothic look, everything else is all purely confection for book covers, because in the books he dresses like a goon most of the time.
Pretty much, yeah.
Silk pantaloons, and one of the things Moorcock is really, really fond of is, and there's one bit which is absolutely fantastic in one of the Hawkmoon books, I think it's Sword of the Dawn, where there's about a page and a half given over to what clothes Hawkmoon and Jaria Cornell, William de Verck choose when they go into a haberdashery in a pirate town.
He loved it, I do agree there. And I think that's something that maybe could have been brought. Steve, why didn't we have a shopping?
I was going to ask, what kind of sartorial flair did you apply to your characters? Because that's truly Moorcockian. Something for campaign 3, Steve. Haberdasheries. Yeah.
Please, we're begging for it. D&D beats you there, Steve. You got to give us a beach episode and a shopping episode.
We did do some.
We did have a beach episode. We had the bar fight.
Yeah. I mean, it was the bar. It was a bar fight.
Bar fighting.
Bar fight was good.
It was good. That was our let off steam. I'm ashamed to say I did not get to let off steam in that episode. I was stuck planning
I got
for
nothing.
the end of the world.
Shopping for clothes and armor in Stormbringer, you could be shopping for anything. Materials of all types.
Stop talking about kids.
Yeah,
I don't want to hear about kids' bones anymore. In terms of flair, though, the one thing that stands out for me is when we were in, I want to say it's Darajor, where we get it's like the leopard plume. We got the big crimson plume for being able to well, that's getting way deep into campaigns, but we managed to defeat this demon. I defeat in bunny ears, but yeah, we got given this this kind of recognition with this big red plume, and we I think we wore that until the end of the campaign. And it was one of the biggest things. It did nothing. It was just for flair. It was just to say that we had it, but we loved it, didn't we?
So excited.
We never defeated that demon, though, did we?
No.
Listen.
Well,
we did in principle.
Well, we did, but you didn't.
I didn't.
I think that gets more into character than fashion, guys.
It's definitely something myself, my mate Loz, who's done some of these podcasts with me, we go way back to our teens. And most of the Moorcockian games we played in our 20s. So we played Elric and various other bits and pieces. Some games we made up ourselves. We played some Hawkmoon. And what would always be a strong feature when we're creating our character was what we were wearing. And I think to this very day, that's carried over into any game I play. I give serious thought and consideration to what the clothing choices of my characters are, and it's all down to reading Moorcock books. But
I think it's quite interesting though, because to be honest, I mean, for the majority of the people, the characters that started in the campaign, we were all part of a crew on a ship. So I think for us, it was like you wore what was good for you. I think the exception is probably Otto, which is Rich's character, as our resident sorcerer / street performer. I think there was quite a lot given to your flair.
We did.
Yeah, it's all about having a lovely looking cape so you can perform, and you can, as I say, you can think a lot about how your character looks, and then the nature is with chaos warps and all sorts that can happen. Your character can change. Interestingly, if someone poisons all of your potions and medicines, and then you end up drinking it, and some of the crew members, in fact, did that.
I couldn't possibly say. The story behind that,
I had
Andy,
pustules.
We got this. I want to say they were like glowing mushrooms from fighting some chaos crab. And the Otto's big thing was like he would, what was it, cough syrups, I think. He would peddle these cough syrup. Whenever we were at port, and it was a fatal mistake when we got to one port, because my character was first mate of the ship. Roddy's character was the captain, and he decided to take Rich's character with him to do some negotiations instead of me, and I took quite a bit of offense to that, so I spiked all of his cough syrups with these mushrooms, not knowing what they did. It took 3 sessions for him to drink some. I was thrilled.
We was waiting a long time, weren't we?
It was well worth it. It was well worth it waiting for you to drink those, because I remember Steve sitting there, and it was another one of those "Are you sure?" moments. He sat there and he said, "Rich, I need you to say the words. I need you to say that you drank
it in your mouth."
Yeah, chaos warped him. He became kind of blue hued with all these green and blue pustules all over his face. I don't even think I was there for that. I think the party was split, but I was weak. I was weak for realizing that it had finally happened.
Well, that's another nice Moorcockian feature, isn't it? Copious amounts of drugs.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That works for me. So before we move on from this little section, Jay, Rodders, have you got anything you'd add about what makes this style of game Moorcockian? What are the features that appeal to you that make it feel Moorcockian?
For me, I've known Steve forever. We started playing role-playing, like, I don't know, when we were teens. I think we were playing Stormbringer, Steve run it, probably like late 80s, early 90s, something like that. And we were like playing and doing stuff. So it's taken till now for me to actually end a campaign with Steve and end a campaign alive playing Stormbringer. Yeah, so I only joined late. I joined late in their campaign, so I survived by not being there for all of it, I think. So yeah, brutal. So I was expecting to die. So every character I make for Steve Stormbringer, I just expect they're going to die that session. That I won't make it. So I don't put much truck in clothing choices. Because I don't want to waste my time because it will be so short.
You see, I'd look forward to that as an opportunity because, you know, one of the things that I don't like about things, I don't know if any of you have come across the latest version of RuneQuest. It takes about 3 fucking hours to create a character because you have to go down to the finest part of detail about their extended family and all this crap. That for me is no good. I want to be able to create a character in 60 seconds. Yeah. And then, you know, if they die, it doesn't matter. Like so games like Moorcock is really entertaining from that perspective. I'm pretty lazy when it comes to gaming and being a GM, so I like things like Barbarians of Lemuria, where once again you can hack that system to any use or any purpose and just shake it up a little bit. But one thing I would do is if I had 3 different characters in the space of 1 4-hour game, I would take great pleasure with every single one in deciding what that latest character was wearing and why. Oh yeah, I'd love it. Rodders, how about you?
Well, you've touched most of it. Consequence has been the one of them. You know, fuck around, you find out. Narrative. Like out of all the systems I've played, I've like Call of Cthulhu. I've dipped into D&D and jumped straight back out of it. Absolutely hated the system. I'm not even joking. I played about 4 sessions of it, and I was just like at the table, like, sorry, bro, done. Had to leave that one. But I played Delta Green, Call of Cthulhu, RuneQuest. You're right about RuneQuest. It is a pain in the ass because it just takes forever. But yeah, it just feels more narrative. Like it just feels like you are in a book or you are in a story, a film, and that's what I get from it. I've never been one for being a rules lawyer. I absolutely detest that sort of thing. So what I do, and it bugs the piss out of Steve, is going, I'm going to do this really cool thing. I go, rah, 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 and he goes, hang on a moment, 1 step at a time. And yeah, and then you just make this roll. And I go, excellent, I roll dice. I pass. Yes, I do salmon leap. Or like I fail and go, you fail, salmon leap. Yes.
Yeah, but Steve's good for that, though.
The running joke in the campaign, salmon leap.
If I may, if Steve's good for that, though, if you do a lot of description for what you're doing, Steve's very good at that and say, right, you've described it really well. Yeah, I'm going to give you a bonus to that. He doesn't get to tied down by rules too often. He doesn't like rules that much.
What I enjoy.
But yeah, that's what you said before, isn't it? Just to keep the flow of the game, because that's what's more important. That is what is more important to me as well. Is like you're saying, the improvisation earlier on when we in that one session. At the end of the session, and he said, I just had to improvise the whole session. I genuinely didn't actually believe that he did improvise the whole session because it was just so fluent. Fair play to him. It was like, I don't know many people could have pulled it off that well. I genuinely thought he had all these notes written down because he thought that's what I was going to do. But no, when I found out at the end, it's quite
Who
impressive.
would have ever expected that that's what you were going to do?
Steve always knows what we're going to do. He has a crystal ball and he can see. It's like he can manipulate us into doing what he wants.
Is true, to be
most
fair.
of the time.
Yeah.
Let's come to you, Steve. Did you have 2 pages of notes on potential child murder prepared for that game?
Strangely enough, Andy, I did not.
No.
That was not where I thought the session was going. I mean, it harkens back when I was a lot younger. I didn't do anywhere near as much prep. I didn't do anywhere near as much planning. I didn't think about the overall plot arcs. That sort of thing came in after watching and reading books written by J. Michael Straczynski, the guy that did Babylon 5. You know, that sort of whole story arc and, you know, foreshadowing and doing the feathering bits in that'll come make more sense later on. You know, I love all that now. But in the old days, I did used to go in with like maybe a sentence or two and run about 5 or 6 different sessions. So it was just going back to the old days. And I really enjoyed it. It was great. And all it did was, you know, bump up the scenario. All I had to do then was, okay, well, what do their actions mean for the wider world consequence. Now, bearing in mind, the session ended with them sailing away with burning arrows from the Oinarians, burning arrows from the Oinarians firing after them as they were literally chased out of town, and an ally that they could no longer call on. And that affected the world events, and it meant that they weren't there for the final fight, and so on and so on.
That was what was supposed to happen, I'm sure.
No.
Right.
The less allies we had
Right.
at the end would have been better. Less chance of us surviving.
I spent the whole episode on a hill praying, and I knocked over a can, and I was trying to fix it, and then I came back down, and the whole place was on fire, and you murdered a child.
Can I just say, though, Chloe's depiction of this average Joe trying to pray to the Lords of Balance was one of my favourite scenes in that whole campaign. I just remember Chloe in her Cornish accent, like kneeling down and saying, "Oh, please, Lords of Beishness, please answer my prayer." It's one of my favourite things to hear.
I really wanted them to have a Cornish accent. I'm so waiting for them to have a Cornish accent, but you were very... As the Grey Lords, you were very grey with it, and I was like...
I was very grey. Sorry, Steve.
If there's a passion for Cornish accents, Steve, maybe your next game should be a Coram game.
Yeah, indeed.
Oh, don't bring us back to Coram, Steve. I've killed him once. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah, previous campaign, I tried to give them Irish accents. I think I mentioned this before on the podcast. I tried to give them Irish accents, all the NPCs, and immediately regretted it because I had to keep it up for about 5 sessions, and it was horrendous. It was offensive at best, and just really impossible to keep up at worst.
But yeah, in our first campaign, Steve, it was the first time I played Stormbringer. And I think maybe me and Rich had read the books at that point, so we knew the significance of who Coram was, and he had me like throw him off the edge of a like pulpit or yeah. And I would just remember sitting there with my head in my hands, like I just killed Coram. I don't know why would you do this? This is really upsetting. So yeah, that was great. Thanks for that, Steve. I really remember that forever.
My pleasure.
And meanwhile, where Steve does really well is apologies if this was said before, but he gets the tempo going really well. So you've got to make these really important decisions, and Steve isn't going to give you a lot of time to make those decisions because it's in like sort of real time, game time.
Which is very Moorcockian as well, The urgency is there. It's like fate doesn't wait for you to dither around and decide the best course of action. It's just, what are you going to do? You've got to do it right now.
Yeah, when Moorcock wrote these books that were 130 pages long in 3 days, probably on shitloads of speed, you want to reflect that in your games, don't you? You want that sense of urgency, Yeah, absolutely. Right, I've finished my beer, so it's time for another random encounter. Who's going to roll the dice for us? Okay,
I'm going to do it.
If it's 2, re-roll.
You got a 5, my guys.
5, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, that's another coffee for me.
Surprise, Chloe.
I think we're being very...
John Smith's.
Yeah, I think we're being very excited to answer these questions, and we're all talking over each other like, "Oh my god, we had such a good time!"
It's great for me because I just love to hear it.
We're just jacking off about Steve constantly,
yeah,
just like he's so good.
Oh.
Stop.
I think, for me, this system
you
is
guys.
really good. It feels organic. You level up as you use skills, which is good because it's not random. Like, you get good at the things that you get good at. You practice. But I think a lot of it is also down to Steve because he keeps the flow of the story going regardless. If you turn up at his doorstep and you murdered a child,
I'll never forget
going.
The first campaign, how he absolutely properly manipulated me. I was law, I turned chaos, and he was like, you can pray to Don Blas, you can go back to law, and at the end of it, but nobody trusted me by the end of the first campaign.
Nobody trusted you by the end of this one.
It's
true.
He's on the battlefield glowing, and they all just like, nah, we don't care about him. they just let me die. But it's just how he writes and the stories and how you and how you get into your character and stuff, and It really, really does influence.
Good at this shit, Steve. For real.
You're good at this shit, yeah.
It's not predictable either, which is the clever thing is.
Well, none of it's predictable for me because I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, there's a little bit of like, it links into what's going on with some sort of Elric book, depending on where he has it. But then there's a little bit of like Inspector Clouseau. You want to work out what's going on. You'll have who's behind this, and then, as in what happened with this one in particular, there was the Pidocles curveball that was thrown, where a lot of what we were fighting was sort of autonomous robots of law, and we discovered that one of the main baddies was actually an automaton himself, which was a main. It was a big
gotcha, wasn't
it?
Moment. We were really like,
gotcha.
Wait, no, you can't do this to us.
Yeah. I think it was the main bad guy. I think it was you, Sara. You said it all makes sense now because he was just so shit at everything.
Yeah.
And I've been dropping the clues like he was an absolute idiot, but he was allegedly in control of all of these armies, and I was just thinking, well, they're not seeing it. No, that's fine.
That's because the clues you were dropping, we're ignoring because we think you're trying to lead us off on a wrong path.
I don't know. Is that more of an RPG thing though? Is that because of the way the Moorcock system runs and because of what we'd learned through those sessions, we just grew really distrustful of Steve and everything he was trying to do. We're just like, nah, this isn't going to be good for me. No matter, he's like, here's a silver platter. It's filled with all your favorite things. We're like, this is bullshit. Okay. I'm not going to take that. This is wrong. I'm going to go straight into danger this way. And he says, yeah, guess what? You fucked around again. So congratulations.
He don't seem to be able to get it right regardless.
Yeah. But if it's any consolation, I've just tried my blueberry muffin sour from the new Bristol Brewery, and it is fucking disgusting. If it's any consolation.
My 5 thanks you, Steve. I'm glad to hear it.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, Steve.
I didn't realise we were just going to be drinking horrible things throughout the session. I'm not drinking.
If it makes you feel any better, Steve, I've got a Over Owler Tor, Sarah Morris, Northern Monk, Classic Summer Punch, Mint Orange, Strawberry, Juniper, and Cucumber.
That's a lot.
You got
that's a lot of stuff.
It tastes like yesterday's washing up water, frankly.
Oh.
So yeah.
You're welcome, everyone. You're welcome. What did you get, Rich? Did you get anything good?
Just a regular John Smith. This one with the boy.
Can't go wrong with a John Smith.
No,
well, I beg to differ. I think John Smith's is fucking terrible, but I'd rather be drinking a John Smith's right now.
I'll be honest, I don't know, because I either drink nothing or I drink just pure spirits and just get absolutely wrecked. So,
well, that's fair play to you. Fair play to you.
I don't drink for fun. I drink for sport. I
drink to destroy.
I drink to make mischief.
Yeah. It's what Moorcock would have wanted.
What he would have wanted.
Yeah. Right, Steve, let's come to you for a second. When it comes to you creating a campaign for Stormbringer as opposed to a campaign for anything else, and I think you're doing Deadlands next, aren't you?
Yeah.
So, yeah, what are your key themes that you want to get across in a Stormbringer game? What's the core of it for you?
Yeah, I think a bit of historical context here. Like Jamie said, I was running this. We're talking 35 plus years ago when I first started running it, and in that time, and there has been the great freeze that we talked about in previous episodes, where for a number of years I stopped role playing altogether. But in that time, I'd run so many different campaigns, and I just all the good stuff from the books I've used, all the really interesting stuff that was slightly fringe I felt like I'd used. And I got to the point where it was like I was only going to run it if it was something that I felt was a new idea. So this time around, it was one of those, I think it was a debate we had around, who would be, low balance and chaos. Law. I think I was telling somebody that Hitler would be described as law. That sort of ever direction, no matter what the cost. And that conversation just sort of planted a seed in my head. And I was like, well, I wanted to do something that sort of said, okay, how if you took that to an extreme, how bad would it be, and what effect would that have on the Young Kingdom? So law primarily has always been seen as the force for light. And again, one of the things I always have a conversation with the players beforehand, law doesn't mean good. And chaos doesn't mean bad. Chaos just means, erratic. Who knows what direction we'll go in. Law is just that sort of onwards, no matter what the cost. And I just thought, okay, well, let's take that theme and really make that the central sort of that driving force of the story, and see how the players react to that. Because one of the things that I get the biggest buzz out of when I write these things is, you talked a moment ago about the sort of Pidocles reveal, where I built him up to be this, albeit useless, but the main bad guy, knowing full well when I did the writing that at the end of campaign 2, he would be revealed as basically as an automaton, and the real power behind the throne was somebody that was kind of introduced in the background. And it's themes like that I try to think of when I'm writing these. It's not just about sort of what will be a gotcha moment. It'd be more about this theme that is, I think, rarely explored in Moorcock. He kind of sets the ground rules in terms of law is this, and that can be bad. And all I'm doing is sort of magnifying that and focusing on that, and then sort of in the mind, it's a beginning, middle, end. So there's 3 separate sort of seasons. I refer to them as, and then the beginning is like set up the scene. The middle is, there's a big war, and and that's kind of my notes. And then the end is, this is where the heroes start, anti-heroes start pulling things together. The allied forces. I don't think about the brutality or the nastiness of the Young Kingdoms as an item within that, because it's a constant anyway. That's how I view the world, so that'll always be part of the background. And the other elements I like to try and do that I think is sometimes can be overlooked in these things is I try to write about what places look like, what they smell like, what they sound like. And I try to do a few sort of different things in terms of, like the one episode we had the guys sailing through Pierre's fleet, and I had the green lights on. And it was like, right, okay, so you're sailing through these, you're in character, so anything you say, any noise you make, I'll be making a listen check to see if the Chaos Fleet hear you. And it's just things like that I try to magnify elements that Moorcock had kind of alluded to. And that's where I find the interest is for me now, is drilling down into that and expanding on that in my own sort of guesses as to how he would have seen it.
It was really effective the way that Steve went about that.
Because, like you said, you went down the law path and to the extreme. It made it very, very difficult, even like in character, to think, this is what I need to do to try and stop this, because like it's so difficult in order to stop something from happening, and you kind of need an idea of how they think, how it's going to work. But it made it very, very difficult to think all the time. It's like, I don't know how to think like that, because it's so regimented and so like the one arrow, the one direction, like you said, like Hitler. Yeah, it's so difficult to think like that, to think that actually, am I making the right decision here?
Even from very early on in Moorcock, I think chaos was generally the evil lot, even though you had that dichotomy with Elric and, Melnibodeans being bound to chaos patrons and all this business. I think in later Moorcock, the acknowledgement actually that law is as potentially destructive from a perspective of stagnation and evil being implemented in the pursuit of a rigorous set of rules or parameters. I mean, if you read the Hawkmoon books, there's no direct reference to law or chaos in the Hawkmoon books or the balance at all. But actually, Gran Breton is essentially a lawful enterprise.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah,
yeah, and they're the ones
it's a tyranny
who
at the end of the day, isn't it? It's that's ultimate law. Is this is the only way?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think Hawkmoon does that very well.
Yeah, some of the strongest imagery in Hawkmoon when it comes to things like, not child murder per se, but some of that stuff in the Hawkmoon books where naked bodies of men, women, and children piled up in pyramids, where the Grand Britannian forces have been passed. Mm-hmm. All of that stuff is, I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever seen a film called Come and See, which was a Russian film made in the 70s about German atrocities in Russia. All from the perspective of a young Russian partisan. but there's imagery in that is reminiscent of what you read when you read The Jewel in the Skull. You know, it's really, really horrific, and piled up naked bodies, and so
but it's regimented, it's efficient, it's
absolutely.
exactly as you would expect law would go about it.
It's done industrially,
but it's got its rules. Yeah,
it's done industrially. It's administered really tightly by accountants and bureaucrats, and everything that goes around making something an efficient industrial scale killing machine is based upon law and process and all of these things. And that's what comes through really, really strongly in some of Moorcock's later work. Maybe not so much the 60s stuff when he was writing stuff at 1,000,000 miles an hour. But yeah, all of this stuff I think it's valid. I think it's raw. I think it's really, really visceral. There is absolutely no reason why engaging in a role-playing game, everything should be safe.
Absolutely.
And
what was clever was
not to the point where you're waving X cards and all that business, because it's certainly the case with a lot of people who game where they may go down paths that other people find uncomfortable. Not because it's challenging material, just because they're dickheads. But this kind of stuff. There's a really, really kind of sort of irritating trend sometimes in games saying, "Oh well, this is adult and mature gaming," where they're really just saying, "Actually, we're being arseholes and deeply unpleasant." But this is a space where, although I think it's quite easy to stray either side of that boundary, and I think it needs a sensible group of people, and it needs a good referee struck games master to actually make this stuff work. But it sounds like you've got a setup where all of this absolutely works, and it accommodates that kind of storytelling, because that's what it is. It's gaming, but it's also storytelling, and it's a shared experience, which is why it's so rewarding, isn't it?
100%.
I quite like with the law. Steve had this, and I don't know if it's in any of the Moorcock books. But he had a void machine, so it was literally bleaching and blanching and neutralizing everything in the area. So everything was just being destroyed by law, making it all white. And I thought that was quite clever, because it wasn't just, oh no, I'm going to be regimented now. It was
the extreme, wasn't it?
It was
multiverse,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Each world traveling through the multiverse. Just being bleached.
That's where some of the games which took certain influences from Moorcock kind of got it wrong, didn't they? Because the whole D&D alignment system, law, chaos, is essentially drawn from, well, not just from Moorcock, but from Paul Anderson as well. But they kind of missed the point. Whereas I can think back to when I was a teenager playing AD&D First Edition, which was my introduction to role-playing games when I was like 13 or something like that. And you've got a 14-year-old kid playing a lawful good paladin executing goblins, because the rules say goblins are chaotic evil. Therefore, his temple dictates that he should wipe out evil, therefore blah blah blah. And actually what you had there was a perfect example through the lens of 14-year-olds playing Dungeons and Dragons of how fucking fascistic and nasty
it's law to the extreme, isn't it? That's exactly it.
Yeah,
funny enough, that's exactly one of the reasons I left the D&D campaign recently, because we went to this place called the Underdark, and there was these creatures, and basically the paladin of Conquest was like, "Yeah, we're just going to murder these guys." I was like, whoa. Like, are they evil? Don't know yet. Should establish communication. And as it was like, we were going to establish a communication. Apparently, this mystical net just appeared out of nowhere, and this voice was saying that these things need to be murdered. I was like, I just stood at the back. I didn't commit to any attacks. I just waited. It's like, right, you sure this is me? But the rest of the party just went like, yeah, we're just going to commit murder. I was like, okay, you're not to take it from the situation just because they're a different creature. Like in the party, I was the actual evil player as well. I was a chaos character. I mean, I wanted to keep them alive so I could make use of these things. But they went, nope, we're just going to go straight in and go for the murderer. And I was like, okay. And just every encounter became like that. It's like, oh, here's some creatures. So instead of actually chatting to them, you just went into, oh, let's do combat. Let's do combat. Let's do combat. And I was like, this is getting boring now. It's getting real boring.
That kind of depends on the group that you're with and the games master that you have as well.
It's again.
I'm also playing D&D at the minute, and my games master lets me get away with all sorts of heinous shit that they probably shouldn't, because it's meant to be a nice, friendly D&D game, and I'm there being like, yeah, let's kidnap some kids. It's fine, whatever. They're my kids now.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Really, it's about the players, it's about the games master, it's about what you do with the material. Because, confession, I actually don't mind D&D 5th edition as a platform to play with players.
I quite like 5th edition. I think it's pretty. I think it's got enough scope and it's got enough flexibility that it all depends on that game master that you have. I think that can make or break any kind of campaign or game that you run. If you've got a really shit one, it's going to be a shit campaign. But I think that it's not necessarily the fault of the system. But I do agree with you. I've got quite a fondness for that one. I think it does give you scope to do whatever you need to do within those confines.
I think there's certain things baked into the system, but it doesn't mean you have to do everything rules as written. I've never done anything rules as written, largely because I'm too lazy to read every single fucking letter of every single page of every single rule book. But one thing I found with D&D 5th edition was, we've not played face-to-face for a while, but we had a face-to-face gaming group for quite a long time, and we've played Hawkmoon, and we've played a various number of different things, Call of Cthulhu, we played a little bit of Delta Green, various bits and pieces. But what I always found was that this group of people, what you get is you get gamers who really, really want a game because they're gamers, and you get people who do it, because they enjoy the social aspect and the storytelling end. And what I found with the people that I game with is, if I was to tell them, I'm going to send you a 3-page primer of rules, just so you know that when we actually get into things, you don't have to continually ask, what am I rolling? What dice am I rolling? What am I rolling against? They would never, ever read it in a million years. And it didn't matter what game we played, they were not interested in reading anything I sent them. They wanted to turn up, create a character quickly, crack on, get on with it. They wouldn't buy rules, they wouldn't buy products. I ended up buying them their own dice and putting them in dice packs.
Oh, wow, okay.
Which they always left at my house and never took home with them. And then I said, I got the D&D 5th edition Player's Handbook. Does anybody want to play it? And fuck me, they all went out and bought D&D Player's Handbooks and all brought them to the... It's just bizarre. What is it about D&D and Wizards of the Coast that makes people spend that money? But they suddenly thought, oh, now we're in the big leagues. We're playing actual Dungeons and Dragons. And they bought Player's Handbooks. Couldn't believe it. But we still had good fun with it, because I'm coming in as a GM thinking, D&D's good. I quite like the framework. People are really engaged in it. They're getting into it. For whatever reason, they want to play a Hobbit rogue, or they want to play, Phil, my partner, she had great pleasure playing a Dragonborn warlock, and she was high as a kite on the fact she was playing a Dragonborn warlock, and she loved it. But it still didn't change the fact that when we actually played the games and ran the games, they didn't murder all the kobolds. They made friends with them. And, and ended up becoming, the Dragonborn sorcerer warlock ended up getting kind of semi-worshipped by the kobolds, and they end up doing quests on behalf of the kobolds. And we ended up in a situation where one of their kobold friends got killed in a terrible fight with goblins flying giant blue bottles. And there was a funeral with prayer kites and incense. And they were all almost weeping at the idea that this beautiful piece of music. If you've seen a film called The Mist, there's a piece of music that plays at the end when Thomas Jane is just about to shoot himself, when he's killed everybody else. I played that piece of music for the funeral of their kobold friend, and they were all like, oh. It was stopped, but it was D&D. It was D&D, it was kobolds. Yeah. So you can do what you want with any kind of system.
What you put into it, you get out of it,
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah.
With D&D as well, it's become very, very popular recently because of podcasts like Critical Role, The Adventure Zone. I'm trying to think of a couple of others.
Like Stranger Things kind of made it popular as well.
That's really brought it into the mainstream.
Yeah.
So that's probably why people are more interested, because if you see people having fun with it, then you are going to be like, oh, I want to play it. That looks like fun that I could have. Whereas, which is really a shame, stuff like Elric and Call of Cthulhu, which is a very similar sort of skills-based sort of level.
It's a chaosium, isn't it? So it's been around for eons, and people are just overlooking it because it doesn't have the Wizards of the Coast.
They all find out. It's D&D is a gateway gaming system.
Drug.
The gateway drug into gaming,
It is they'll get more of the hard stuff later.
Yeah. The thing is for me, like with D&D, is it can start off and then you got the social element, like he was talking about, and that's all great. And then you start going out, but then, you know, and then it just kind of fades off and gets a bit boring. But the thing is with Stormbringer, it's like extreme sports version. You know, they've got that fear of death and that fear of death, and it gives you that adrenaline, like, and Steve,
point for that
what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because you know that if you do the wrong thing, you're dead, and that's it, and it's game over. But D&D,
because
you
Steve's
do the wrong
really
thing, it's like, oh, I can get out of this.
Is it because it's Elric?
Yeah, but that extra added fear of death in it, which you don't get with D&D, gives it that much more excitement.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like every session you just go and it's like come home and it's like I can't wait for the next session. It's like, oh my God,
yeah.
so lucky.
Yeah.
I survived that session. I'm so lucky.
That's exactly. You feel lucky that you made it to the end of the session.
Well,
You're just like, I did it. I get to live.
The whole campaign.
Yeah.
I lost my nose. I had a big scar at my face. I had a huge bulbous lump on the top of my head. I was crippled with a limp because nearly every fight I got into was near enough on the grievous wounds table. Like nearly every single fight. So every.
It was your fault, Kieran. Your dice were just terrible to you.
They were terrible, but then they helped me when I needed them to. And that's how I managed to survive the campaign. But like I said, you know, it's like...
The only time our dice exploded was in the last session where we had the maps and everything. And then we there's like odds were against us. And then our dice was just like, nah, bro, I got you. I got you, bro. And then that was it.
I think that's kind of Moorcockian in itself, is that the system lends itself to being able to be like, what happens here is dependent literally on the roll of the dice. Like, you could have the powers that be on your side, you could have everything. If you roll and you fumble, it doesn't matter if you've got a strength of 18, it doesn't matter if you've got chaos points out the wazoo. It's like, you rolled a 98, you fucked up, you know. It's a will. Yeah, the will doesn't care. Yeah, another quote from Steve is he will say to you, if you don't have to hit a specific skill, he'll just say roll, don't fumble. It will curse you. You will fumble as a result of that roll.
2 fumbles in a row after you said that, and my character died. I rolled like a 96 and a 97 on Donnie, and he died.
Yeah,
it's your fault, Steve. You did this.
Auto cast a spell on me. So I'm running up the stairs away from the first automaton we saw, and he cast a spell on me, which gave me, I think it was an extra 5 on my dex. So, and that was it. And I run up my first action, rolled a fumble, run up the steps of the ship, straight over the side of the ship into the sea.
Yeah, you were drowning. That's right. Yeah.
and I could not swim. And that's
the amount of times we fell in the sea.
I know it's at the end for me. It was like fail, 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 critical success. And he was like, when I needed it, it was there for me, and that was it. And that was the only reason I survived.
Who were we to make a bunch of characters who would
swim?
Sound a campaign on a boat that we couldn't swim to save our fucking lives.
I tell you what,
literally sometimes we couldn't swim to save our lives.
Nanny's got an 18 in swim. I wasn't going to happen again. I was like, I'm going to mid-max Nanny.
She never needed it, but she had it.
She's on land most of the time.
Wouldn't know where she was going though.
No. She floated like a cork out to sea.
The other one that was interesting, but I find a bit more unfair, is something happened, Steve, that made us...
Something happened?
Mm-hmm.
Did it?
And so, like, Roddy's character changed with mine, and we had to act in the same way that what our characters were.
The Trials of Ballo?
Yeah.
I found that a little bit harder to stomach because someone else was making decisions over my character.
Oh, it was difficult, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was an experiment from me. It was, I like the idea. I like, when you watch a syndicated TV show like Stargate, there was an episode of Stargate where everybody's personality swapped, and you had, the guy that will, the Tialk, I think his name was, the big sort of quiet guy, the strong guy, and you had the normally sort of bubbly guy, and they were both acting like each other, and I like the idea of that sort of, having to be, almost a polar opposite to what you originally created, and that was the idea with that more than anything was just to see, for example, Dame and Nanny swapping bodies.
Nailed it.
Nearly caused me to have an aneurysm. It was.
We've got to act normal.
It was very well done, but considering that you pulled it from like the oldest trope in the book to do a body swap episode.
Yeah. How well do
we
you
had to
know?
run with it, yeah.
How well do you know the other people's characters?
Yes.
Can you make decisions that they would have made? And if you can't, then you're going to fail.
Clearly didn't die.
The answer was 1 out of 3 ain't bad, because me and Ceirun, we got through that unscathed, and everyone else ended up with hands for feet, man. It was a rough one, that, wasn't it?
Hands for feet. I kept mine. I rode into battle with hands for feet.
But it was good because it does get you in the mindset of, your companion. You're trying to think, well, what would they do? And you'd have Steve going, after you made all your decisions, that felt right, or that wasn't right,
That is not what they would have done. You're like, okay.
What would he have done different? And he's like, oh, yeah, could have done that. And yeah, probably would. It just gets you thinking about the other character, which is good, because usually, you can be a bit selfish. You just think about your own character really a little bit too much.
Yeah, Rich.
I thought it was a really good. Yeah,
who would have done that? Whoever would have done that, Rich.
I think it was a good improv exercise because it made me play a character that I would not have created myself.
It's brilliant.
Well, on the subject of characters, that's a good segue, because what I want to do next, after someone else rolls a D6, because I've drank this absolute sack of shit and I want something better.
Nice.
And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that the dice of fate will actually lend themselves to give me something nice to
grab
drink.
a can of Coke.
Go on. Go, Roddy.
Someone roll a dice. Someone roll a dice so Jay can get his next tiny can of Coke. Yeah, do it.
Number 2.
We had two.
We've had two. That's double 2.
I rolled a 4. So.
Number 6.
Oh, 4 or 6. Well, that gives us a choice then, doesn't it? We've got a 4, we've got a 6. So I'm going to see what my 4 is. Oh, it's Tiny Rebel Cherry Liqueur Marshmallow Porter.
Oh.
What's number 6?
6.
But 6 is Gravity Well, Inner Space Smoothie, Chocolate Cherry Pie Fruit Smoothie at 6%. So I'm going with that one.
But that's a lot of words for a beer. It's a lot of words.
They're getting a bit pretentious.
Well, mine is Schlentela Raukbier, which I'm reliably informed means smoked beer.
Oh, no.
Instantly bad.
Is that bad?
I hate anything with smoke in it. It upsets me. It's like drinking an ashtray.
I think it was one of the RPG episodes when Loz and I had a 12% Russian Imperial Smoke Porter, and it went down the sink. It was fucking awful.
Oh, okay. Well, I may change to 6.
We rolled a 4 or a 6.
Oh, God. That does smell like charcoal.
Honestly, you're going to be smoking this beer, Steve.
Yeah, you got to go for it, Steve. You got to go for it.
That's fucking disgusting.
It's the aftertaste, isn't it? It's the aftertaste. It's terrible. Oh my God, I'm so sorry for you.
Put the lid back on that one.
Think of all the times he's tortured us.
Honestly.
I'm glad it wasn't just us, Steve.
Oh, that's horrendous.
It's very, very rare.
Smoking it, yeah.
It's very rare that Loz and I have poured beer down the sink. And one was the Russian Imperial Smoke Porter, and the other one was... There might have been another one as well, but the other one that I can remember was an oyster stout. Yeah,
oyster.
I've no idea how oysters factored into any of it, but it was an oyster stout. We got it from an off-license in Hull. I suppose you're in a fishing port, you're going to end up getting something nautical themed, aren't you? But I've got to say, an oyster stout is as chaotic and horrific a brew as you could possibly ever imagine.
Jesus,
goblins could drink.
It was bad.
That's actually kind of one of the regulars that regular ales or stouts in my local.
Really? Ooh.
So yeah, I will drink. I can drink that. It's quite nice.
Interesting. We all went and had a fight in. That sounds like the name of a beer in there.
It does. Oh no.
Well, on that score, then we'll start with you, Rodders. So I want you to just give us the Cliff Notes introduction to your character. Tell us about him.
Oh, he's got notes, guys.
notes. You got problems.
Now I feel unprepared.
Yeah. I'm
Oh no,
sorry,
I don't have notes. I just got my character sheet. That's what I've got.
Okay. I forgive you.
Right, so full name. Well, we're gonna go with the original one because
Yes.
because Liraz Leto, basically character for like Arabian look. So he's a sailor from the east, essentially, and therefore is also the foster father of the bear, which is Sara's character. Basically, it's like your regular merchant, not pirate, merchant that goes around, trades with the Purple Isles. Starts off acting like he was like bit crippled. He uses like a cane to make him look like he's a captain, but he's a very, very well worn captain. But he's a very shrewd character. Like he's got like all his fingers and thumbs and all the pies. A bit like Nick the Greek from Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, being the captain of a ship. I can't remember the name of our ship because I don't have.
The Merciful Servant.
Oh my God!
No, the Merciful Servant. Oh, that is our ship. Was the Merciful Servant?
You named
got
it.
You named it.
But was that the second ship that we got? The second ship.
No, the second was the Merciless Servant,
Merciful Servant.
Which
That's
you
right.
also named.
which you also
Yes,
named.
Yeah, that was my ship as well.
Oh, your
That
ship,
was
wasn't
my
it?
ship, that one.
This is me now. I am the captain.
I am the captain now. Look at me.
Yeah, I think I
I
did
did that backwards, didn't I?
because I was going to put a
yeah,
biohazard
just-
or something.
I don't know because I put on the spotlight, so I'm not the best for like description here. But I better role playing, like spontaneous role play. How I used to do the cat, like so. I was very much a Pire fan, like proper fanboy of Pire. So every time we do like battle or if I could, I'd always pray to him, which I took from one of the books where Elric would do what he's fighting would basically battle prayer. I did it a little bit more fanatically. So like Steve would go like, you're in a situation here. I was like, right, I'm popping outside for 5 minutes. I'll scroll up a prayer on my phone, and then I'll be like, right, Steve, this is what I'm gonna do. And I'll send it to him. And then I ended up having like one of my notepads just full of prayers.
I think we could have reliably a prayer book for Leto. The number of prayers that you spun up on the spot. And to be fair, the dice rolls that you had, like, you know how you have to roll under your chaos points?
Really low.
Man could, he would roll like shit for the whole game, but you ask him to roll under 12 chaos points, he'd fucking do it every time and pull it off. It was ridiculous. Genuine. A little prayer to Pire and he'd pull it the fuck off. It was crazy.
That stuff is solid gold, isn't it? You know, when you finish a campaign and you've essentially got a ledger of prayers that your character has written, it's pure gold. So, Rodders, what do you think the other players might have seen as your crowning moment as that character?
I don't know what. So
I can think of something, but it's not for me to say.
There was a giant Manfred. There's a giant Manfred that was climbing up, and I was salmon leaping up. Literally, you could like thinking like probably like that at the top of him. That and then get into it and just giving it like the whole coup de grace in the end, and then what happened after that. I don't want to spoil it just in case Steve wants to say what happens after that. But that was pretty cool. You know, the gulag, that was something. That was quite intense because I was climbing skills. That was the one. It was a really cool. So when they were players who used to be with us, his character perished in that. But the way it was quite tight. It was very fraught with danger moments because my climb skill ain't great. I'm a sailor, by climbing, well, I just let the young lad go up to the crow's nest for that sort of shit. But
you do yourself a bit of a disservice, Rodders, because you took over the prison.
The prison, but I did take over the prison. It was a kind of little bit of
I just
evil
took over the prison.
Yeah, exactly. Just a little thing.
The TV show Porridge.
Yeah.
And you had the main villain guy in that.
Yeah. You
How
really
you going
did.
for that? Well, I can never remember his name. Not the police now. The actual guy.
Oh no, I know you're on about the Oinarian. The
big
third
guy. Was his name like Rock or something?
Was it Karak?
Correct.
He's the bad guy, Karak.
Yeah.
The Oinarian thug, if it
that's
helps, I've got the blog open. I just did a find. I knew it was Car something,
I remember doing a scene because we actually caught up with that guy, and that was a very brutal scene. I think you, Steve, actually had to write it in the thing very more politely, because I did that as a very brutal, very very harsh ending to that NPC. He deserved it though.
It got personal, didn't it?
It did really get personal.
And it's not many games I've played where an enemy or an NPC just really, really fucking sticks a cactus up your ass, and just annoys you. When you're just like, right, this guy's got to die, and got very intense. That did.
We did.
He was constantly trying to control you, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was quite a good ending to getting out of that.
Thanks, Roddy. So, Jay, what about you? Cliff Notes, 60-second introduction on your character.
Yes.
Hello, my name's Dame from the week. I don't know what his accent. Yeah, he was thick, really thick. Started off with intelligence of 6, and got better when somebody else lived in his head for a session. Yeah, he was just stupid, and he just didn't like the entire gods thing at all. He did this thing with Steve at the start of it, just saying, "No, don't want any chaos points, don't want any truck with any of the gods or any of this crap. It's all bollocks." And that was his thing, really. Just a thug that thought gods were dicks.
So what do you think the other players would have seen as your crowning moment?
Getting to the end, I suppose.
You fucking dick.
All right, come on, let's hear it. What was his crowning moment, everybody?
The end. That conversation at the end.
Suddenly you found this intellect out of nowhere to sway the plot to the right way, and I was just furious.
I know you're unhappy, but it's not.
Can you imagine if you wanted to kill everybody in the world and you're like, I know it's
not
bad.
into character though. You just simplified it. It was just dumbed it right down, and I looked at you and was like, "Yeah, that's it. It's that
pretty
simple."
much it, yeah.
And you went, "Yeah," and that was
So
it.
the person pulling all the strings, it wasn't Pidocles, it was this character, Two Scratch Dickens. And Dame, she'd had, lots of upsets in her life, and the gods had, sort of upset her, and she's pure chaos because of it. And yeah, your character Dame was like, "Fuck the gods." And
she was like, "Yeah, that's a good point."
It was bang on. It was fuck the gods.
Yeah, I'll change my whole perspective. Oh fuck, but how do we stop the world from ending? And we were just like, fuck's sake, this guy he didn't even have to roll for it. He just did it.
He talked the talk, didn't he? So he didn't have to roll.
But I had goosebumps. It was again.
It was a good session.
Not doing it justice. It was very an epic moment. Another epic moment.
My crowning moment of Dane is the fact that Sara's character Bear gave the 2 fingers to the big bad at the end, and then died in this really heroic way. Everything like it was
saved her.
She had a revenge.
So upset.
And then James saved her, and they lived happily ever after. And it was very much like, you what? Sorry, she's just killed like everybody on this planet, and you've just saved her.
It was wrong for her to get stabbed.
I was like, you little shit.
The anger I felt was out of character. It was out of character. I was going to take Jay outside. I was going to shake him. I was really upset.
So just to be 100% clear here, Sara's character, literally just before she was about to make the ultimate sacrifice, turned to me and said, "I am going to shift her 6 times, one for each of the characters that I've lost because of her, and shift the big bad." And I thought, that's the end of that. Jamie's character then went in, and for the only time he's ever used any sort of a power from the gods, he used his demonic ability to heal her. And it was just poetic. It was like, the look on Sara's face now is not too far away.
I was so upset. I can't even.
She was such a piece of it.
Yeah, and I couldn't do anything about it. I was dead.
Yeah, pretty much.
Isn't this one of the beauties, though? Isn't this one of the beauties of role-playing games, where you've essentially got 6 or 7 people defining the story, And when you get to those key character beats and those key emotional beats, it might have been satisfying if it went the way that you wanted it to go. But actually now that you're reflecting back on how things went down, they become much more memorable as a result of that kind of climax of
100%.
different perspectives and different emotional reactions. It's a wonderful thing that you don't get in any other form of entertainment. And it's really unique to role-playing games. It's wonderful. It's wonderful hearing you talk about it. Kieran, cliff notes on your character. I mean, we already know some of them, obviously.
Yeah, so
but, tell us the stuff we don't know.
I basically used to try and get my medic skills up. So I would go from town to town, helping people, healing people, but I would do things on the side to experiment with some people and see what certain things what effects they would have on their bodies. And basically that's how I learned my medic skill. So that was a big part of the game. My armor was made up of all different types of like animal skins, people skins, bones of different things that I collected. And then I just got thrust upon the Merciful Servant because I was, well, when I go from town to town, I'd be found out, I would have to run. And yeah, so I ended up on the ship because they would ask no questions. I could help out. I was very good at making things and healing people. So
serial killer.
Yeah.
What would everybody else, apart from the child murder, judge to be Kieran's crowning moment as a character?
We're all going to say a poor child, but I actually quite like the fact that he turned like a chaos crab into an actual weapon. That for me was quite ingenious.
Yeah, I took the chaos crab. I made a sword out of it. I made a shoulder plate for the bear, and eventually made an axe as well for the bear. And they were very good weapons, incredibly useful. But as for the rest of the crew and people, I just saw people as a resource. And that was it. That was my character. I didn't really care for anyone or anything but myself. And yeah, everyone else was just a resource to me. And when Dane came along, it was absolutely fantastic because he was a thug. And at the moment when needed, I left him for dead because I got what I needed from this cave. And we was fighting. What was it called? It was the many threads, we called it. Yeah, a robot made up of lots of different robots. It was really nasty and it was deadly, and I didn't want to fight it. So I got what I needed out of the cave. I snuck back out, turned around. Dane was there in trouble. Had all of his attention, so I saw the opportunity to make a run for it. But thankfully, he survived.
It's okay, I got it.
But yeah, that was my character. He just lived for himself, and it was his own gains. But he would help anybody along the way, because obviously ultimately helping other people would help myself. So
I actually have a different crowning moment for you, only because it was so funny at the time it happened. You and we were both like the tinkerers on the ship, and we had to repair some armor, like some armor got lost. One of us did the main role and then the other one supported, and that was okay. And then we did it again for somebody else who lost their armor, and it was a critical fail. But we didn't know, obviously, because it's a critical fail. So we were like,
diving
this is the
suits.
best armor we've ever made. And it just got torn through like paper and just like killed the person almost instantly. No, he didn't die. He just had loads of damage done to him at the one of the temples I think we went to. But yeah, the fact that we were like, oh my, this armor is so good. Steve was like, yeah, you made it. Well,
my favorite way to
It's gonna be
fail.
good. I made it.
Yeah, when Steve says, "Yeah, you really fucking fumbled that."
You
So
really-
you think it's great, you know?
think it's amazing. Yeah. I've had a few of those with Steve where he's like, yeah, you've done that.
Yeah,
and
same.
amazing job
But
on it.
that's the beauty of the dice, wasn't it? That was a critical fumble, and yeah, it was amazing, but it was the worst piece of shit. But when I made the weapons,
No, you aced it.
I had a critical success, and Steve did not like it one bit, but he was like, I can't argue with the dice. That was a critical success. So yeah, these weapons are going to be amazing. So yeah, that.
Kieran, what was the name of the god that you dealt with?
Alan.
Balan?
Yeah, Balan.
No,
Yeah, and
he went up the hill.
The sad god.
Oh, the sad
Yeah.
god.
So
Yeah.
this is where I took references from the books themselves. The sad god, the giant shield, the blood sucking vines and all. All of it was taken from the books. All I did was just transplant it into our story and see how you guys would deal with it. But yeah, that was the sad god shield from.
That was cool. Which book. You did a really good job with the sad god.
Yeah, he was just sad because he wanted to die.
So you killed him.
So you killed him.
Simple. It was quite easy. Yeah, it was like, yeah, I didn't do anything.
You were the right person for that job.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kieran. So, Richie.
So I had a few, but my main character was shut up. My main character is Otto, who was a sorcerer and street performer. Just going into the cave of where there's chaos warps going on and killing some chaos butterflies. They're badass. The stats are horrendous for them, and I managed to kill one. That was pretty awesome. But I think the main thing was he was a bit of a selfish bastard, but I had like a character arc where I actually turned out all right at the end when I died. So
and no one knew. No one knew, Rich.
All right. Personally, I knew, and that's what matters.
Amazing.
So I was using sort of doppelganger spells and pretending to be. I think it was it Pinnacles or Two Scratch Chickens?
Oh, it was Pinnacles, yeah.
Pinnacles. So I was, trying to save all the villagers of this one place.
Yep. Very noble.
Yeah, I think I pushed it a bit too far at the end because I ended up dying. But yeah, it was quite epic for a while. I didn't make it through the campaign. No, I had 3 characters in total.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the middle.
Yeah, there was just the guy.
The middle one was that I died by the vines, the blood-sucking vines. That was horrendous. There's no way I was ever going to survive that.
What do you mean there was no way? You did it to yourself.
Yeah, did you on your own?
Rich, I even said to you, are you sure you want to do this? And you know what that means.
Gonna die.
Perfect example.
I didn't go. I went halfway up the hill. I didn't go the full way.
All right, everybody. So Richie had 3 characters of varying lengths of mortality. So rather than what was Otto's crowning moment, what was Rich's crowning moment in this campaign as a player?
One name, Mackay.
Oh my god! When you killed the plot, yeah, that was my favorite moment.
That was so good.
Yeah, that Otto's crowning moment.
Tell us, Rich. Tell us how you killed the plot.
Rich, tell us.
I want to hear it again.
Yeah. Well, Steve, tell us.
No, right, so there's a couple of nuances I can't remember about this, but we needed to get some information off this character, Mackay, who a very knowledgeable scholar, and I did a prayer. It was very important that we got this information out. Steve, you're going to have to help me on this, but I prayed for him. The prayer went very wrong, and in my hands, as I had my hands either side of him, basically his head exploded.
Steve had to pick up the pieces.
That's the plot line.
It was a roll don't fumble situation. It was one of these where he jury rigged a spell that would allow them to unlock this guy's memory. This guy was from a different plane in the multiverse, and it affected his memory. So they were like, okay, this is quite, and it was quite easy. So I've got the plot. They've done all the hard yards. This is literally a roll don't fumble scenario. It's one of those situations. Richie rolls, and Richie's luck is what it is, and he rolls a fumble. I have to go with what that means, otherwise it belittles. I can't just fudge that. And he kills the guy that basically has all the it's the exposition guy. They've got the exposition guy in their hands, and Richie's bad luck at the right moment, the wrong moment, killed that. And I had 2 weeks to go away and think how I could make that exposition still available. And it sort of pushed me to do, the Diary of Mackay, the 3 pages that became almost like a MacGuffin for season 3. So it turned into something that I hopefully made a bit more fun around it. But at the time, all I could do was think, although it's funny, because it is just inherently funny that one player fumbled and fucked my campaign, but it was just like, well, what do I do now? I can't just, it's too important information for it to be something you can just belittle and say, okay, well, this other guy knew it. It couldn't work that way. So, but it was just bad luck, and it was bad luck that happened to Richie, and everyone just, never let them forget it.
Again, this is one of the things that you really, really need in games, is we have this movement. There was a strong movement towards storytelling-driven games, which took away dice play and everything else. But you've got to have the fucking dice there, haven't you? You've got to have the dice there to create the drama and the uncertainty in those moments. Oh, yeah. Brilliant. Yep. Cheers, Richie. Sarah, tell us about the bear.
God, what is there to say about the bear, guys? So yeah, her real name is Ushi, which means little bear. She is originally a slave from Pan Tang, an absolutely massive woman. I rolled an 18 on her size, so she's about 6'5", an absolute hulk of a woman. She was rescued. I put in quotations / sold is the reality. She was bought by Roddy's character Leto to be the muscle for the Merciful Servant. She ended up as the first mate and his kind of adoptive daughter in the Merciful Servant. She was that muscle you were talking about with the Lomirian axe. She literally had this axe. She would, I had 4d6s to play with when it came to damage. I knew what she could do when it came to damage. It was everything else I kind of had to worry about. But yeah, as the campaign went on, I think Bear's story is fundamentally one of loss. I think everyone would agree. She kind of lost everything as the campaign went on. That started off quite small. I think Shan made her some enchanted armor, a shoulder plate, her axe. She lost those things. That went on to lost the axe, lost the shoulder plate.
Lost it.
Yeah. She ended up losing the people that were most important to her as well. So initially I had her as kind of because I was used to playing lore characters. Weirdly enough, I was that was what I could do. I knew what it was to be a lore character. So to play a chaos character was quite different. But yeah, she wasn't really aligned to any particular god. She kind of favored PRA because that was what Leto favored. But when things started to go really wrong, when she started to lose the people that she cared about, I think by the time Donnie kind of died, she very much went to Zionbarg, which is, as you know, the god of revenge. So she was very much there. And by the time it got to the end of the campaign, it wasn't really about winning or losing for Bear. It was just about ending things. In the middle of the campaign, she ends up with a demon in her head called Nosfera, and that was one of it's not the crowning moment I think of her campaign, but to hear Steve's voice in Bear's head to be Nosfera was one of the most unsettling parts of the campaign, because it was that moment where I realized that this direction that I wanted this character to go in, it wasn't my decision anymore. It was going to go in the way that it was going to go, But yeah, she was really interesting to play. She managed to make it until the very last session. She died at the finale. And I think as crowning moments go, people have already mentioned, I decided right at the finale, if I got the opportunity, we saved 2 Scratch from kind of destroying the multiverse. But Bear's got a chip on her shoulder as big as Everest. She wasn't going to let that stand. She still had revenge on her mind. She'd lost her father. She'd lost, one of several love interests. She'd lost Donnie. So yeah, she shanked the fuck out of 2 Scratch. It wasn't 6 times, Steve. It was 8, which was the number of characters that we had lost coincidentally in the campaign, which is, ironically the 8-pointed star, which, I'm not going to say it was fate, but it was. So yeah, that's how she died, and then fucking Dame decided to save 2 Scratch at the end. So yeah, but other than that crowning moment, I think it's got to be when Steve very obligingly handed the reins to me when it came to playing Nosfera. There was a point in the campaign where I had to choose to let this demon take over to gain an ally in Gainor the Damned, I think it was. He actually brought in Gainor to try and be an ally of this, and I got to play this vampiric demon walking through these hordes of other demons, feasting on mortals and stuff. And it was such a a moment that was so apart from anything this character had ever done, but it was really humbling to be able to say, right, this is what I would do as this character, but this is actually what the demon would do. And it made a lot of choices that I think ended up having real repercussions in the game. I'm looking at Rodders in particular, and I'm really sorry that you got ripped apart by dogs because of what I did. You know? So yeah, it's not really Rodders' crowning moment, but for context, I think that was one of the things that hit us hardest. Was Leto's death. Yeah.
The reason I quite enjoyed that part is because I actually got a little bit co-writing with Steve, the story after it, and of Leto, and people were like, why did Leto die? And why did you do that? It's because of desperation. Because
yes, Sara and I were so angry that you just ran into it. We didn't understand at all.
Yeah.
Like, not even in character. We were like,
yeah, it was desperation.
It was purely in character, because I was meant to go through this whole ordeal of letting the demon take over to get this ally and to get this information. But because the demon wouldn't have wanted that information, I didn't ask for it. And the repercussions was that, Rodda's character, like Leto had been there since session 1, ran off into these woods, and it's not the death that I would have imagined for any character. I would have, if you were going to die, I think Leto should have died on the sea. Ended up being ripped apart by dogs, like chaos dogs, just random fucking, those kinds of encounters you wouldn't have expected anyone to die to, and he got completely ripped apart, and my character had to watch, and it was fucking horrible.
Coming down to it was basically I rolled well, but then Steve rolled for the one dog a critical hit. And how I wrote it is because these creatures remind me of these half dog, half bird creatures from Bloodborne, and that's how I envisioned the look of them. So how I envisioned how I was going to die is I was just at the edge of the forest to get the Sara. I think Nani was with you.
Yeah, literally in reach. Yeah. We got there the same round that you died.
One turn of getting to you. And
literally, it was you were gone.
That clear moment of like, yes, I'm almost there. Just to have this beak smash right through from my back out of into my into the front, out in front of me, blood spraying across all the trees, and then just Leto literally collapsed into the floor. And just basically saying, like, the last words that come out of his mouth was like, "I'm sorry."
It was horrific. Yeah,
it's not D&D.
Not D&D at all. It was very Moorcockian the way you died. It was not the way I would have had you die.
Yeah.
That's how we made the system, though. That death was so harsh, but it's not like smack by a sword, you fell over, make a save. That's a proper death, and that's how even. When Mantrap decided to die he died like a man with Auto. That was cool. Like that was really cool. But
yours wasn't cool. It was terrible and needless. And it was Moorcock. It was awful.
It's all about the memories, isn't it? If I had a character over the years that had died by being torn apart by dogs,
and a seafaring character. He was there as the captain of the ship. He'd done so many fumbles, so many quick successes. He'd taken us literally from the Young Kingdom across it, and then to have him die on land by dogs that, in comparison, my character and Chloe's, they were nothing to us. We'd rolled, they were nothing. And to have him pinned down and ripped apart by these dogs, it was horrific. I really can't stress enough. It was
chosen as well. Like,
he was meant to be. Yeah.
He was maybe like the hero in my mind because he'd been chosen by Pierre, and I was like, surely he's got like cool powers.
All right, guys. Probably not nice for Rodders there.
And then
we're like, sorry you died shit, Rodders. I'm really sorry. Yeah.
Border collies.
I remember.
It was a lovely funeral. It was a lovely funeral.
It's a wonderful death, and it is really, really Moorcockian because, I've read I don't know, 100+ Moorcock books, probably more, since I was a teenager, and the one death that always sticks out to me is summarised in one sentence at the very end of the Rune Staff, the last of the first Hawkmoon series, where Oladan. You find out what happened to Oladan, Hawkmoon's companion, for 3 books. And all it says is something along the lines of, Oladan died alone, away from his friends, hacked to pieces by Boar infantry. And I was so traumatised by that.
Why did he have to die like that?
Unbelievably traumatised by it. And it's stuck with me. That sticks with me more than any other Moorcock character death. So I never played this game, but the fact that you're talking about Roddy's character dying, being torn apart by dogs, just feels so Moorcockian.
Alone, without friends, on the edge of being able to reach help.
Like hands reach of like your daughter, and it's just like,
I was so upset.
The other thing that sort of like just jogged my memory is my god died.
Yeah,
so there was like,
that's true.
Well, no, he didn't die. His like human effigy, human avatar, on
physical manifestation on the plane.
Yeah, we sailed past. And we had the opportunity to investigate, but by that point we wisely decided not to. Yeah, we discovered then by a bunch of PRA priests wailing on the beach. PRA died.
I had a vision, and I tried to tell you, and you all ignored me, and then you went to see the crying priest after, and I was like,
"Listen, I had a lot on my mind, Chloe. I had a lot on my mind."
Just saying, Nanny was there trying to give you the tea, and
it's true. Nanny gave all the tea right up until the very end.
Well, Rodders, based upon my limited insight of this campaign, based upon the last 2 hours of conversation, that is the crowning moment of all of it for me. But we've come full circle now. We started off nearly 2 hours ago listening to Chloe talk about Donnie. We're going to go back to Chloe now. Donnie, give us the Cliff Notes version of Donnie that you haven't told us already, and tell us what you think everybody else would think.
In this campaign, and they were both pretty major characters. They both, I had one that lasted until the end of the first episode,
mid-second,
and then I had another character then that started pretty soon afterwards. One of the things I have to praise Steve for is, even though I didn't have a character for like maybe a session, I was still engaged enough to like be there and want to listen to what everyone else was doing regardless.
That's a real test, isn't it?
Yeah, I couldn't play, but I was still like, oh my god, what's happening next? What's happening with this? What's Rodders doing with this guy that he's trying to kill on the beach? And Rodders' character like snowboarding, if I remember, down a hill.
That was funny. That was quite funny, actually.
And it was like, it was just like Tony Hawk pro skatering down this hill, getting away from these Manfreds, and it reminded me a bit of like the Sonic games or like the Lion King, the old game where you have to like dodge stuff back and forth. But Donnie's character, this was my first foray into like role-playing games. So I was, the first thing I said is like, I want to make a priest. And Steve was like, it's not like that. You can't really make a priest who has magic in that sort of sense. Like it's a bit different. And so after having discussions with Steve, I was like, I'm just going to sort of stick with what I know. So I actually based Donnie off by some relatives of mine. And he became a bit sort of arse backwards about it, but yeah, he was based off a family member, and he became just like a normal guy who did a bit of leather work or iron work, and he could do a bit of medicine, and he knew a bit about sailing, and was on this ship with his mates that he'd like grown up with. In my mind, he'd like grown up with these guys, and he was balanced and everything was hunky-dory. And then he'd gotten a man that was just like the captain that was absolute psychopath, and his 8-foot daughter, and then like all these murderers. And it was just like, it makes me think of like maybe working in Tesco's and a bunch of murderers turning up, and you're like, oh my god, what? So that was Donnie. Donnie was just like, he was just a good boy. He said his prayers to the Grey Lords, and he just wanted everyone to like get along. A crowning moment for Donnie, other than Donnie's boys. We had a song and everything. Donnie's boys.
It's to the tune of Jesse's Girl, I think.
Jesse's Girl, yeah. Donnie's boys. And that would be like Donnie working with the crew. So Donnie didn't really work with the actual characters. He hung out with the crew and like worked on the boat. One of Donnie's crowning moments, other than breaking the can and trying to fix it, was probably making speed holes in the boat.
Oh, yeah.
He crashed, and I
speed holes.
Yeah, I was meant to repair the boat. That was one of my jobs, and I rolled a critical fail. So me and the boys, in our pants, because it was really hot, drilled holes in the boat to make it go faster. And that was one of my crowning, like doing a load of damage to the boat. We were stuck on this island. They were fighting a crab monster, and I was on my boat, just minding my own business. That is another crowning moment of Donnie, is floating back up to the boat while you guys were getting chomped up by a giant Manfred. And I
With the elevator music.
Yeah, and I just went back to the boat because that's where my mates were. And I was just minding my own business at the boat, being like, is everything okay here, guys? Nothing bad happening? All right, I'll see you in a bit. Bye, guys. Love you. And they was all like, oh, love you, Donnie. Unfortunately, Donnie did 2 critical fails and crashed the boat, and everyone died, basically, apart from, a couple of you washed up.
Yeah, I think 3 of us. I think it was me.
3 of you washed up on shore.
Yeah, me, Otto, and Shan survived that. And I think it's kind of telling that as Donnie died, the ship sank. So it really made sense because we'd had this ship for a season and a half. Completely just into a coral reef, completely disintegrated. Like prow first, off it went. Donnie died. We never got over it. We recovered Donnie's flag though, which I would say that's one of the crowning moments for Donnie. So
the flag.
Yeah, it was like we were getting to the point. Well, yeah, it really did. It really did. It ended up on every ship that we had. Yeah, so we were getting to the point where like law was taking over everything, and obviously flying a chaos flag on the ship was going to be real dangerous. So bless Chloe, she used a lot of Donnie's balance points. I think you had a few balance points, and you rolled under them. But Steve said if you pay the difference between what you rolled and what you got, we'll give you something really cool. And Chloe, bless her heart, was like, yeah, let's do it. So we ended up with this, we called it Donnie's flag in the end. It was this balance flag that would basically, if you sailed past, any ship would see what they wanted to see. So if you sailed past law, they would see a law vessel. If you sailed past chaos, they would see a chaos vessel. And it kept us safe for the remainder of the campaign. I've got to be honest. It was a really cool item. And even though Donnie's boat, the Merciful Servant, kind of collapsed and sank, the next boat we got the Merciless Servant. I remember it was in character. Steve came up and said these NPCs were like, yeah, we recovered this from the wreck. And they point to the top of the mast and it's Donnie's flag flying. I'm like, I'm fine. Don't look at me. I'm not crying. It's fine. So yeah, that was really, really cool. I'd say that's definitely something that carried through the rest of the campaigns with you.
I will also say, in one of Steve's rarer kind of moments, he did take me to one side and he was like, okay, this is what's happened with Donnie. Your best mate on the boat, who was an NPC, he was not one of the guys who were one of the guys that play a character. He was like a total, just made up, non-playable character.
He was Steve's character. He was
Master N. It was Steve's character. He was like, look, you washed up on the shore and you are injured, but you're not going to die. But you look at your mate who has rescued you and he is totally messed up and he's done his best to protect you. And I was like, no, Donnie couldn't live with himself knowing Master N sacrificed himself for him. I was like, just let him go. It's what he wants to be with Master N. Just let him go. It's where he needs to be. I was like, all of his mates have died. He blames himself because of the 2 critical fails. You just got to let go.
And that's rare. I mean, you said at the beginning of this was new to you, but yeah, so therefore you're probably not aware that that's really rare. A lot of people,
honestly, yeah.
If you're given the opportunity, look, here's an end, your character can live through this, and it's a believable way that your character can live because you'd formed such a strong and positive relationship with this NPC. It made sense that they would have tried to save you, and the idea was in these torrents in the water, he literally embraced you, so that he took all the brunt of all the sort of impact into the rocks for you. Most people would have gone, oh yeah, that's really sweet and lovely. I'm alive, yay! But you chose not to, and it was quite refreshing.
It didn't feel right, because they were such good mates, Master N.
In his Daisy Dukes, he would never.
Daisy Dukes and bikinis on top. I just couldn't imagine him being able to live with himself. He was such like a balanced guy.
Yep.
I imagine he just screamed until he died, basically.
Probably.
Because all of his mates are dead. I
think we described it as dying of a broken heart, didn't we? I mean, it sounds a bit foxy, but actually, for the time, that was absolutely the way it felt.
it worked for the character in my sense. And then my second character,
I was going to say, listen, because Donnie died, Nanny was born.
Nanny was born. So
Yeah,
Nanny
screaming till he died sounds better than dying of a broken heart as well.
Yeah.
Okay. More Moorcockian.
Yeah.
More Moorcockian.
Yeah.
Yeah, his mind shattered and he just died. Nanny was originally going to be based off. Have you seen Count Duckula with the big fat nanny penguiny thing? I guess it is. It was meant to be based off her, so it was all very like, oh, Ducky Boo. And then somehow she morphed into the most vile human being. I don't know how she became such a horrible. She was also somewhat based off a relative, but way, way worse.
So you say you don't know, but you do.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, she was based off like my sort of one of my grandparents who was a bit of nasty work, but she, like, Nanny was like way worse. Like casting spells on children to keep them in line and stuff like that to make them behave.
Nanny will give you the itch.
Nanny will give you the itch.
My favourite one, Nanny, was when you said, I say to the kids, if you don't wipe your bottoms, Lord Harriot will climb up there and he'll rip your guts out.
Yeah, he does. It's true.
Chris was in front. You
climb up your ass and he'll eat
Climb up your ass and eat your brains.
That's it, eat your brains.
Lord
You
Harriot.
wipe your bottoms.
Yeah,
Scared the
gotta
shit
clean
out
your
of the
bottoms.
entire crew, yeah.
Make sure you clean your bottoms. One of my favourite bits with Nanny, weirdly enough, other than the Lord Harriot will climb up your ass and eat your brains, was telling the Pan Tangians what for in that massive speech I gave that I only remember bits and bobs about.
Yeah.
Completely ad-libbed. It was so phenomenal. I had this, like, I was trying my best. We were in Pan Tang, which is obviously where beer is from, doing our best with the fucking Theocrat. Obviously he
us as well.
Yeah, but he's not giving either of us the time of day because I used to be a slave. Rodders is this old man, and that's not what Pan Tang's about. Out of nowhere, Nanny comes out spitting bars, just. I can't even remember what you said, but it went on for about 2 or 3 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
People on tables around us, because we were up at the club at the time, stopped what they were doing and were listening.
Yeah, she was convincing. Yeah,
you guys were making an absolute meal out of it.
Honestly, we really were.
I was like, I know what the Pan Tangians about. They're about power, and I'm like, let's just go for that. So I was like, I may be an old woman, but you guys are young, Pan-Tangian flesh. You can take down these robots, no problem. It's obviously a lot better than that, but...
Genuinely, though, Steve
when
looked at her,
you can, like, flow a bit better, but yeah.
He looked at you and he was like, you don't even have to roll. You've done it. You don't even have to roll for that. That was crazy good. It was, I definitely say that was one of Nanny's... crowning apart from the end, that was chef's kiss. That was so good.
That's my point. After I'd done it, I was a bit like, oh, there's so many bad places I could have died, but there we are.
Yeah, but the way you did it was it was just incredible. Basically, you tell it. You tell it, Nanny. Tell him about the boar. Tell him about Agatha Crispy.
The crispy boar, Agatha Crispy. So, as Sara said, her character got possessed by a demon, and this demon very kindly ate constitution points. So if you were caught short with this demon, you would have constitution points sucked out of you.
Actually, it was POW points, which was worse.
POW, sorry, it was POW.
Because you were a sorcerer.
So I was a sorcerer, and then I went from having like 17 POW to like 10, which meant I was pretty much an actual cripple at this point. My character was totally useless. I had 5 appearance, 10 dexterity. Like I was worthless as a character. So I used all of my chaos points to basically make a bomb. I prayed to my god and I was like, make me a bomb. And I was like, right, I'm gonna embody Rodders here. And so I made a bit of a poem as well. And I sent that off to Steve and I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. Make a bomb. So we basically got a dead carcass and I prayed to my god and then I gouged my eyes out. Not in real life, but I gouged my character's eyes out and gave him my eyes and I said, yeah, make me a bomb. So by the end of it, we'd made a pig bomb. So it was an undead boar that gave me some other powers, but the main thing it was meant to be was a bomb that I could slit its throat and it would just kill everything on like the continent pretty much, or to that extent. So yeah, I was saving it, and I was deadly terrified because if I died or the boar died, I'm pretty sure the bomb would go off regardless.
Everything's got a price. Everything's got a price.
So it was basically like every time I got into a fight, if anything started going south, I was like, oh my God, my pig's going to die. And then we would all die, and then that would just be game over for all of us. But very luckily, I lived to the end. We were getting overwhelmed with troops, and I was just like, you know what, let's tilt the pig's head back and just like, yes, for the boys, and just slit the pig's throat, and it just all went off then. And then I realised, there's so many better places I could have done that, and it actually would have been more useful, but there we are. It was still pretty cool.
Nanny wouldn't have known.
Nanny wouldn't have known.
No.
Actually, I like the idea that Nanny definitely knew and was looking from like the other realm and being like, oh, shit.
Well, on that pig neck slicing climax, we're down to our final point. Now, I was going to say it's time for our final wandering beer roll, but we already had a roll of number 4 that we rejected and went with number 6. So I've just gone with number 4, and I've gone for the cherry liqueur marshmallow porter by Tiny Rebel. I can't even speak properly. Tiny
That's
Rebel.
all beer, probably.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, are you going?
Give it a go.
Richie, are you going with your Hong Kong beer?
Yeah, you're going with your
I'm going to
shit.
go for this rainbow, Hong Kongian beer, which the sherbet sour one.
Oh, that sounds really awesome. None of the beers I've had this evening have been particularly satisfactory, to be honest.
Is it good, Rich?
It's okay.
Steve, what are you finishing? Are you finally drinking your smoked beer, or have you gone on to something else?
Oh no, that smoke beer's going down the toilet. That is absolutely
Power.
vile.
Yeah.
That's vile. No, I've just chosen now because I really wanted to try this, and it is Duchess Chocolate Cherry, which is barrel-aged dark cherry beer, and I must say, it is the nicest of the night so far.
Well, I think I used to drink something similar to that. They sold it in Sainsbury's. It just tastes like sort of cherry-aid kind of thing. It wasn't really beery.
Well, this one is quite hoppy.
Better than what I was drinking then.
Slay Puff Cherry Liqueur Marshmallow Porter is better than any of the ones me and Loz had. And it's
Really?
actually it's got close to room temperature as well, which is often a massive mistake with some of these beers. But yeah, it's not actually too bad. So finally, in order to close us out, there's some trappings of Stormbringer that, I do recall that always stick in my head. The first of which is like you're able, because lots of stuff in Stormbringer, the original Chaosium Stormbringer RPG, if you did it randomly and used all the random tables, it was perfectly possible to end up with a completely useless leper beggar from Oin with one hand. And don't get me wrong, I love that. And when we ran Stormbringer with some patrons for the podcast, one of our patrons, Neil Burton, actually did end up with a one-handed beggar leper, which was hugely funny, especially when it came to things like just trying to climb a rope ladder, and it would go horrifically wrong because of the state of his one hand and his leprosy. The second was price list for equipments, and the old two-man canoe being on the price list, which I can remember laughing at for much longer than was probably required. Then the fact that you've got a dance skill, and one of the things I absolutely love in games, and Clarky will actually reflect back on this. Clarky did a sandbox game based on post-apocalyptic Tenerife, and we would end up in like gunfights, and he would lambast us for never putting points into our gun skills because we always put them into dance or perform or act or any of those things. Which is, if I've got a dance skill on my character sheet, I do want my character to be the best dancer possible out of the entire party, and if it comes to anything, I will try and dance off the villains. But finally, the big thing in Stormbringer, and I think it was also the same in Elric ! Which was a strong feature, which was that game's version of magic items, which was demon-bound something of something. And everybody would end up with a demon-bound, demon-bound slacks of stay press, or demon-bound, ironing board of something or other. So as your reward for joining me this evening, I have a quest reward for each of you, which is based on a D100 table with multiple columns, which I have randomly put together based upon loads of crap, mundane nonsense, which I'm going to ask each of you to roll on a couple of times. And because some of the names that came up on this randomly generated D100 list of things like names, you know, a sword called Stormbringer, for example, are so lame and kind of generic fantasy. I've also come up with another couple of options as well. So, Chloe, let's start with you. So, you roll a D100 for the name of your item, and it will be some name, the demon-bound something of something. So, roll a D100 and let's see what we get.
My first roll is a 25 because I'm
Okay,
using a digital one.
So 25 is Stormbreaker, which is a bit rubbish. So on 25, for a whimsical magic item name, you've got Whizzlenog, and for a combo of 2, you've got Wiggle Heart. So you could choose which one.
Whizzlenog, 100%.
Whizzlenog. So Whizzlenog. Okay, roll again.
6.
6 Whizzlenog, the staff. Or, if you'd rather go with a mundane item, Notebook.
Notebook, yeah.
So it's Whizzlenog, the notebook of roll a D100.
87.
87. That is Whizzlenog, the notebook of stifling.
Sounds
So
all right.
it's up to you to decide how that will be functional in a game. And obviously, should there ever be a season 3, and should Steve ever allow you all to actually keep these items, it'll be up for Steve for how this would work mechanically within a game. So,
I know
Sarah,
exactly what it would be.
Sarah, you're up.
All right. I got a 27.
Blood Moon.
Ooh.
Or if you want the whimsical name, it's Wobble Womp. Or if you want like a sort of a mixture of the two, it's Wobble Flare. Now,
I think it's going to have to be Wobble Womp.
okay, so roll again.
Okay. An 18.
Wobble Womp the braces, or
Okay.
Torch, like battery operated torch.
We'll go for Torch. Torch is better than braces.
Wobble Womp the torch of
84.
That's stifling again.
Oh, should I roll again?
Yeah, roll again.
Okay. I got 41.
Attracting.
Oh, okay.
Wobble Womp the torch of attracting.
I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If at any point you don't like any of these names, you know, there's a D6 table as well. You could have, I don't know, Destiny Chardonnay, the torch of
Destiny Chardonnay is
Sounds like a really interesting stripper name, that does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that's what it's going to be. I'm writing it down, and you're going to
Yeah.
have it in Deadlands at some point, Steve.
So
I had a little D6 table of names in case you didn't like the fancy ones. So there's number 1 is Destiny Chardonnay, 2 is Derek, 3 is Malcolm, 4 is Deirdre, 5 is Madge, and 6 is Constance. So you can have any of those.
Oh
if
my
you,
god.
You can have any of those if you don't like the other ones.
Madge, the notebook of stifling.
I'm going to go for Destiny Chardonnay. That's too good.
If you want it, it's all yours. Richie, it's
mine.
your turn.
29.
29 would be Venom Spite.
Venom
Or-
Spite.
Venom Spite, or if you want the whimsical one, Flufferpuff. Or if
Venom,
you want
I'm gonna
like,
go Venom Spite.
or if you want a combo, it would be Fluffer Knight. But go with Venom Spite.
I'll go with the first word, Venom Spite.
All right.
Yeah.
Venom Spite the something. What is it?
66.
66. Venom Spite the goblet or mouse.
The Goblet sounds interesting.
Okay, Venom Spite the goblet of
91.
harrowing.
Ooh.
Venom Spite the goblet of harrowing. Oh,
Ooh, I
the
like that.
demon-bound goblet of harrowing.
Love it.
Crikey. Jay,
37.
37
Whimsical, please.
is Snortle Whip.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would have been Night Wrath.
Nah.
Snortle Whip the
22.
necklace or cassette tape.
Cassette tape.
Venom Spite the cassette tape of
67.
echoing.
What?
Venom Spite the cassette tape of echoing.
But no, not Venom Snake, was it? It was something else, wasn't it?
Snortle
Yeah.
Whip.
Oh yeah, you went for the
Whimsical.
Whimsical all the way.
yeah. I forgot what it was.
A wimble.
Well, was it Wobble
Oh,
Gong?
very good.
It was Wobble Gong. Wobble Gong the cassette
play of
of
Thingamabobbly.
yeah, thingy. I forgot already. Kieran.
Echo.
Yeah.
Echoing.
I'd like to see how that's
Echoing.
going to fit in the Deadlands sort of
Echoing. Yeah.
realm.
Kieran, roll the dice of destiny.
One.
Ooh.
One.
Oh,
One.
critical.
One.
One.
Ticket.
So that is Stormbringer
No.
or Bumble Shadow.
Come on.
Gotta be. Bumble Shadow. 42.
Bumble Shadow, the demon-bound pipes or clock.
I'll go with pipes.
Pipes.
Yeah.
The demon-bound pipes of
56.
guarding. Bumble Snot, the demon-bound pipes of guarding. Oh, what could it mean?
Kidding me?
I like the idea of
I'll figure
gardening.
it out.
It's like a typo.
Just change it to gardening. Yeah, fuck
Yeah,
it.
demon-bound pipes of
Demon-bound
gardening.
pipes of gardening. Rodders,
72.
Fireclaw or Fuzzy Puff.
Fuzzy Puff.
Fuzzy Puff, the
78.
stone or ironing board.
Ironing board.
Ironing board of
96.
Fuzzy Puff, the demon-bound ironing board of invoking. Ooh. Invoke what? We may ask. Well, only time
Every
will tell.
shirt you iron with it is like
Yeah.
glamour or
Yeah.
something.
Amy.
Yeah. Only
Iron your
time
pants, invoke
or
something special.
destiny can tell. And Steve, we can't leave you out.
Oh, yes.
We can't leave
Come
you
on,
out.
Steve.
All the way. So 77.
77 is Night Stalker or Snortle Dusk.
Snortle Dusk. I mean, it's the same thing as Night Stalker, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
78.
Sling or Iron. Someone else has got
Me
the
and
iron.
ironing board, man.
Someone else has got the ironing board.
Me and Rodders all the way.
Yeah. The iron of
79. That was 78, 77, 78, 79.
purifying.
Oh.
Use the iron of purifying on the ironing board of invoking. They like cancel each other out.
Oh God, what could happen?
Most
Oh.
clean washing.
Oh, good effort.
I don't think you've done me any favors there, Anne, by the way, because I can see Destiny Shad making an appearance in Deadlands.
It's
I
a
can-
guarantee.
I can
It's not even an option. It's a
already-
guarantee. A
We're-
guarantee she's
We're,
coming.
running up, we're generating characters tomorrow, so I can see. Oh, thanks.
Well, you know what? I would be filled with nothing but pride if Destiny Chardonnay, the whatever it was of something or other, makes an appearance in your Deadlands game. So, you know, it's suffice to say, it's been a splendid couple of hours. I've absolutely loved hearing all about your experience of Steve's Stormbringer / Elric ! Games. And I hope you enjoy your Deadlands campaign. But will you ever come back, perhaps, after your Deadlands campaign? Will you do more Moorcockian gaming?
Hope so.
Oh, yeah, I'd
Yeah.
definitely do it again.
If we're
Bring it back to your
invited,
podcast. I was like, yeah, if you invite us, I don't see why not.
Well,
yeah, if we're
jolly
invited,
good.
I'm there. Honestly, to the campaign, definitely. If Steve runs another Stormbringer, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
you know
Team
what?
Death.
It sounds like there was such good fun, and it sounds like they were so engaging and so enjoyable, and they created so many amazing moments. I genuinely hope you do. But all it remains for me to say, really, is thank you very much for dropping by, Derry and Thomas, to talk about it.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Having us, yeah.
Massive thanks once again to Steve, Chloe, Sara, Roddy, Jay, Richie, and Ceirun for taking the time to talk to me about their Stormbringer campaign, The Void. You can find the full write-ups of the Void campaign and more on Steve's blog, cruisingforamusing36190591.wordpress.com. But trust me, you can just search Cruising for Amusing on any search engine and you'll find it just fine. And thanks as always to our patrons for keeping this show on the road. First, those without tier: Anthony Piconti, Tim Cardos, Dave Dempster, and Sebastian Weetabix. And our Chaos Engineers: Andrew Cicluna, Andrew Spong, Andrew Van Ness, Anthony Porter, Benjamin Fletcher, Brandon Mays, Dan Charnley, Dave Griffiths, Dave Voxman, Dave will be back soon by the way, Gabriel Laycock, Harvey Faulkner Aston, Jim Kirkland, Jim Jupp, John W. Lays, Jules Lawrence, Mal Pertwee, Matt Saltz, Nelbert, Ofer Ziv, Paul McRandall, PJ Cooper, Scott Butler, Simon Perrins, and, new to the Donblass, Nick Hopkinson. Thanks for the support, Nick. And thanks to our crafty Jugaderos, Alexander Harris, Christian Hundal, Eliel Westenra, Liam Turner, Loz, Mark Taylor, Matthew Broom, Graham Holden, Toby White, and last time around I welcomed Sean Twist to the Donbass, and, as is customary on these occasions, I dropped in a line to see whereabouts he is and what makes him tick, and he said, I'm in London, Ontario, Canada, the other London. I'm still getting into Moorcock and ordered his Doctor Who novel after hearing your show about it. I found 7 large volumes of Moorcock in a used bookstore last month and bought the lot. I'm 59 and I think we have similar influences. We had Doctor Who here on TVO, the provincial educational television station in the 70s and 80s. Judith Merrill would come on after the show and tell us how stupid it was and how the science was wrong. I think that was TVO justifying showing it. I also read a ton of Marvel comics and DC, and still do, because you just can't let go, can you? Thanks for the podcast. It's a lot of fun. Well, you're more than welcome, Sean, and you're correct. We are definitely of the same vintage, I think. Thanks again for your support. And eternal thanks, of course, to our patron demons, Alistair Davison, Andy Clark, Andy Darby, David Lee, Fred Quiche, Gareth Wilson, Glenn Sawyer, Greg Faulkner, Gwen Barlow, Ian Stead, Imria, Jenny Stim, Jason Vogel, Joe Monty, Jonathan Sharp, Lee Gary, Mark Hebden, Marius Latauskas, Miles Reed-Labato, Neil Burton, Paul Hillary, Randall Gatlin, Steve Round, Tom Murphy, Tony Malazzo, the OG patron, Norman Beresford, and last but never least, Robert McMillan. Okay, enough of my blather. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram with the handle @BreakfastRuins. You can email us at breakfastruins@outlook.com. The webpage is breakfastintheruins.com. BITR Breakfast in the Ruins Radio is live on Radio Garden or via the web player at breakfastintheruinsradio.blogspot.com and a few other radio players. We have our Patreon page too. There are a few extra odds and sods on there. But for now, take care, stay safe, and we will meet again soon on the Moonbeam Roads.